The silence of space is often described as peaceful, serene, even beautiful. But sometimes that silence is a scream. The scream in the void. It ripped through the void like a primal shriek, an emergency signal slicing through the inky blackness. Commander Vel, his forefinger hand pressed against the control panel, watched in horror as angry red lights pulsed across the bridge of his flagship. The Altarian Republic's pride, a marvel of engineering, was dying, and with it, perhaps the last ember of hope for the entire Galactic Defense Coalition. Commander, we've lost contact with the defense fleet at KTH Prime, Lieutenant Nitch reported, his blue-scale face etched with weariness that had become a universal mask among Coalition forces these past 3 months. The Hive, they've breached our energy shields. Vel's large, dark eyes squeezed shut for a fleeting moment. 3 core worlds, 3 entire civilizations, swallowed whole by the chitinous nightmare that crawled from the galactic rim. The Hive, they moved like a plague. Their bioships, multiplying faster than the Coalition, could obliterate them. Every energy weapon, every plasma cannon, every particle beam they possessed seemed to just bounce off. Useless. How many ships do we have left? Vel's voice was a gravelly whisper, dreading the answer. 17 functional vessels, across all fleets. Commander, the Zerapim lost their entire battle group at Central 7. The Voron Defense Force retreated after losing 80% of theirs. 17 ships. The Coalition had begun this war with over 4,000. Now, they faced an enemy that grew stronger with every world it consumed, every species it absorbed into its grotesque collective. Vel moved to the main display, where the tactical map showed angry red markers spreading like a cancerous infection across Coalition space. The Hive moved in chilling, perfect coordination, their bioships working as if slave to a single monstrous mind. Individually, they weren't much, but their numbers, they were endless. A desperate plea. Sir, incoming transmission from Admiral Rex of the Combined Fleet, the comms officer announced, his voice tight. The holographic image of Admiral Rex flickered to life on the bridge. The Cauldron leader's usual proud bearing was gone, replaced by bone-deep exhaustion. His crystalline skin, usually vibrant, was dull, and his telepathic crown barely pulsed with energy. Vel, we need to evacuate KH Prime immediately, Rex said, no preamble, no customary greeting. The Hive has landed ground forces. Our energy weapons, they can't penetrate their bio-armor at close range. The civilian population, how long do we have? They'll cut him off, urgency clawing at his throat. Hours, maybe less. The planetary defense grid is down. Our ground forces are retreating to the capital, but they can't hold. We need reinforcements. Vel, we need them now. Vel looked around his bridge. His crew worked in grim silence, tried to coax life back into systems shredded in their last encounter with the Hive. They all knew the truth, a truth neither commander dared to voice. There were no reinforcements coming. I will send our emergency beacon to all Coalition worlds, Vel said, finally. Perhaps someone will answer. Rex's image nodded grimly, then winked out of existence. Vel turned to his comms officer. Send a priority distress signal on all Coalition frequencies. Tell them we need immediate military assistance at KTH Prime. Tell them. He paused, searching for words, any words, that might cut to the fear, that might convince someone, anyone, to help. Tell them this is our last stand. The signal screamed across the galaxy, carrying the Coalition's desperate plea to every member world. It traversed the vast, cold emptiness of space, reaching worlds that had already fallen, worlds preparing their own desperate defenses, and worlds that had never even heard of the Hive threat. An unlikely hero. 3 days out from Earth, Captain Torres was in the belly of his ship, the Star Runner, checking cargo manifests, mining equipment, medical supplies, routine work for a routine crew on a ship that had seen better decades. Captain, you need to hear this. Engineer Bob's voice boomed from the bridge. Torres climbed the narrow ladder, his boots clanking on the metal rungs. The Star Runner's bridge was cramped, functional, bathed in the soft green and amber glow of countless displays. What is it, Bob? Emergency transmission, sir. Coalition frequency. They're asking for military help. Torres frowned. Earth had only joined the Galactic Defense Coalition 2 years ago. Most member species still treated humans as newcomers, polite but distant, accepting Earth's membership while making it clear they consider human technology primitive. "Play it back," Torres ordered. The bridge speakers crackled with static. Then Commander Vell's voice filled the air, laced with desperation. He spoke of the hive, of fallen worlds, of millions of lives already lost. The Coalition's most advanced fleets had been obliterated. Their energy weapons were useless. They needed help from anyone. Torres stared at the star charts on his navigation screen. KTH Prime was a red smear now, an active threat zone. Entire civilizations being devoured by some kind of insectoid army that adapted to every weapon thrown at it. "Sir, what do we do?" Navigator Lisa asked, her voice barely a whisper. Torres had spent 15 years in Earth's Merchant Marine, 8 before that in the Terra Navy. He knew military protocol. He knew civilian vessels like the Star Runner had no business wading into galactic wars. But he also knew something else. People were dying. "Bob, can you boost our transmission power?" "Sure, Captain. How far do you want to reach?" "Earth. I want to reach Earth Command directly." Bob worked for several minutes, rerouting power from cargo bay lights, from non-essential systems. The Star Runner wasn't built for long-range communications, but Bob had been modifying ship systems for 20 years. If anyone could do it, he could. "You're connected, Captain. Direct channel to Earth Command." Torres activated the comm system and spoke, his voice clear, unwavering. "Earth Command, this is Captain Torres of the merchant vessel Star Runner. I am forwarding a priority distress signal from the Galactic Defense Coalition. They are requesting immediate military assistance. Multiple worlds have fallen to an unknown enemy force. Please advise." Earth answers. The response came faster than Torres expected. A crisp, military voice answered within minutes. "Star Runner, this is General Adams at Earth Command. We have received your transmission and the Coalition distress signal. Please maintain communication silence while we assess the situation." Torres waited, his crew working quietly around him, understanding the gravity of the moment, yet unsure of their role. The merchant ship continued its mundane journey through space, while Earth Command reviewed the Coalition's desperate plea. When General Adams came back on channel, his voice held a different tone. "Captain Torres, please relay the following message to Coalition forces. Earth Command is dispatching the 3rd Terra Marine Battalion and the 7th Fleet to provide assistance. Estimated arrival at KTH Prime in 72 hours. Tell them to hold their positions." Torres felt his breath catch. The 7th Fleet, Earth's largest military formation, and the 3rd Marines, among humanity's most experienced combat units. Earth Command was committing significant resources to help species most humans had never even heard of. "Understood, Earth Command. I will relay your message immediately." Torres opened a channel on Coalition frequencies and broadcast Earth's response. Somewhere in the darkness of space, alien commanders would learn that help was coming from the newest, most primitive member of their alliance. They had no idea what they had just asked for: the primitive savior. Admiral Rex stood on the observation deck of the Coalition command station, watching the blue-green planet of KTH Prime spin slowly below. Black smoke plumed from dozens of impact sites across the surface where Hive Bio ships had landed. The insectoid invaders were spreading like a disease, consuming everything in their path. "Admiral, long-range sensors are detecting incoming vessels." Commander Yax reported, the young Caltran officer's crystalline skin flickering with nervous energy. "Unknown configuration, approaching from Vector 77 Mark IV. Rex moved to the main display. "Show me." The tactical display revealed 15 ships moving toward KTH Prime at standard Coalition speed. The vessels were strange, angular, made of metal and ceramic, not the bioorganic materials most advanced species preferred. They looked primitive, almost crude, compared to the elegant, flowing lines of Coalition warships. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the lead vessel," the comms officer announced. They identified themselves as the Terran 7th Fleet. Rex fell a moment of confusion. "Terran? Those are the humans?" "Yes, sir. The species that joined the Coalition 2 years ago. Their homeworld is classified as primitive by the Cultural Assessment Board. Rex vaguely remembered the humans. Earth had been granted coalition membership mostly as a diplomatic gesture. Despite their crude technology and backward social development, their representatives had seemed harmless enough, though there was something unsettling about their forward-facing eyes and their tendency to show their teeth when pleased. "Put them through," Rex ordered. The main screen flickered, showing the bridge of the human flagship. A human male in military uniform looked out at them, his face harder than Rex remembered from the diplomatic meetings, with scars visible on his jaw and neck. Behind him, other humans worked at control stations that seemed to use physical buttons and switches instead of the mental interfaces favored by civilized species. "This is Colonel Davis of the Terra Marine Corps," the human said in the harsh, guttural language humans called English. The universal translator converted his words with a slight delay. "We received your distress signal. Where do you need us?" Rex studied the human commander. Davis had the same unsettling forward-facing eyes as all his species, but there was something else there, a calm certainty that seemed utterly out of place given the desperate situation. "Colonel Davis, I am Admiral Rex of the Coalition Defense Force. We appreciate your response, but I must warn you, the situation is extremely dangerous. The Hive forces have already destroyed our most advanced battle fleets. Their bio-armor adapts to our energy weapons within minutes of first contact." Davis nodded. "Understood, Admiral. How many enemy forces are we facing?" "Ground estimates suggest over 50,000 individual Hive drones across the planet's surface, with an unknown number still aboard the bioships in orbit. Each drone stands approximately 8 feet tall, with natural weapons that can cut through our strongest alloys. Any air support? The Hive uses flying creatures, approximately the size of our fighter craft. They move in coordinated swarms and have proven immune to our plasma weapons." Davis turned to speak with another human on his bridge, their conversation too quiet for the translator to pick up. When he faced the screen again, his expression hadn't changed. "Admiral, we're going to begin landing operations immediately. My Marines will establish a beachhead around the capital city, while our fleet provides orbital support." Rex felt his crystalline skin darken with concern. These humans clearly didn't understand what they were facing. "Colonel, with respect, your people may not be equipped for this type of combat. The Hive is unlike any enemy the Coalition has encountered. Perhaps it would be better if you remained in orbit and provided logistical support." Something flickered in Davis's eyes, a primal intensity that made Rex instinctively step back from the screen. For a fleeting moment, the human looked like something ripped from the nightmare stories Rex had heard as a child. "Admiral, my Marines are ready for combat. We'll be on the ground in 2 hours." The transmission ended, leaving Rex staring at a blank screen. Around him, the Coalition bridge crew worked quietly, preparing for what many believe will be their final battle. Unstoppable force. 2 hours later, Rex watched through long-range sensors as the human fleet began launching objects toward the planet's surface. The Coalition tactical computers identified them as simple kinetic projectiles, chunks of metal, accelerated to high velocity by chemical explosives. "Admiral, the humans are bombarding the planet with primitive weapons," Commander Yax reported, disbelief in his voice. "They appear to be using solid projectiles rather than energy weapons." Rex shook his head. These humans were even more backward than he had thought. Kinetic weapons had been abandoned by most civilized species thousands of years ago. They were crude, inefficient, and caused unnecessary destruction to planetary infrastructure. The first human landing craft descended through KTH Prime's atmosphere 30 minutes later. Simple metal boxes with chemical rockets. Nothing like the elegant anti-gravity vessels used by Coalition forces. Rex watched as dozens of these crude transports landed in the ruins of the capital city, directly in the middle of the largest Hive concentration. "Sir, Coalition ground forces are reporting contact with human military units," the comms officer announced. "The humans are advancing directly toward the Hive positions." Rex activated his personal communicator. "Commander Vel, what is your status?" Vel's voice crackled through the speaker, punctuated by the sharp crackle of weapons fire. "Admiral, the humans have landed in Sector 7. They are moving toward the main hive concentration on foot. I tried to warn them about the drone swarms, but there was a pause, filled with more weapon sounds. Admiral, you need to see this. The main display switched to a ground-level view from one of Vel's reconnaissance drones. Rex watched in growing fascination as human soldiers advanced down a street choked with rubble and abandoned vehicles. They moved in small, coordinated groups, each human carrying what appeared to be a primitive projectile weapon. Hive drones erupted from behind buildings, from sewage tunnels, just as they had when they overwhelmed Coalition ground forces. 8-foot-tall insectoid creatures with razor-sharp claws and bio-armor that could deflect energy weapons. They moved with coordinated precision, surrounding the human soldiers from multiple directions. Rex expected to see the humans retreat, as any sensible species would when faced with such odds. Instead, the humans did something that made Rex question his understanding of galactic biology. They charged. The human soldiers ran directly toward the hive drones, their weapons spitting rapid bursts of solid projectiles. The primitive bullets struck the bio-armor that had proved immune to Coalition plasma weapons, and the armor, it cracked. Pieces of chitin flew through the air as the kinetic rounds punched through biological defenses that had seemed invincible. But that wasn't the most disturbing part. The most disturbing part was watching the humans themselves. These creatures moved like predators. They split into groups without verbal communication, flanking the hive drones with a tactical precision that suggested millions of years of evolutionary hunting behavior. When hive creatures struck back with their natural weapons, the humans absorbed impacts that should have killed them and continued fighting. Rex watched one human soldier take a claw strike across his chest that would have killed any Coalition species. The human stumbled, looked down at his torn uniform and bleeding wound, then shot the hive drone in what Rex assumed was its head. "Commander Vel," Rex said quietly into his communicator, "what exactly are these humans?" "I don't know, Admiral," Vel replied, a note of awe in his voice. "But they are winning." On the tactical display, red markers representing hive positions began disappearing as human forces advanced through the city. The primitive projectile weapons that Coalition scientists had dismissed as crude and ineffective were systematically destroying an enemy that had seemed unstoppable. Rex realized that Earth's classification as a primitive world might need to be reconsidered. The Deathworlders. Dr. Kane stepped off the human transport shuttle and immediately began coughing. The air on KTH Prime was thick with smoke and dust from the ongoing battle. Around him, Coalition medical staff rushed to treat wounded soldiers from both human and alien forces. Admiral Rex approached the human doctor, his crystalline skin flickering with curiosity and concern. "Dr. Kane, thank you for coming. We have many questions about your species." Kane adjusted his medical scanner and looked around the makeshift command center. Coalition officers worked at their stations while human soldiers moved through the area with casual confidence. The contrast was striking. The aliens moved carefully, as if the damaged environment might harm them at any moment. The humans, they acted like they belonged in a war zone. "What would you like to know, Admiral?" Kane asked, opening his portable medical kit. "Your soldiers," Rex began carefully. "They are different from what we expected. The hive drones that have been killing our forces seem unable to effectively combat your people. How is this possible?" Dr. Kane smiled, showing his teeth in a human expression that many Coalition species found disturbing. "Admiral, has anyone explained to you what kind of world Earth is?" "Your planet is classified as primitive by our cultural standards," Rex replied. "Limited technology, tribal conflicts, crude energy systems." "That's not what I mean," Kane said. He activated a holographic display from his medical scanner. "I mean the biological classification. Earth is rated as a Class 12 death world by galactic standards." Commander Vel, who had been listening nearby, stepped closer. "Death world? What does that mean?" Kane's display showed images of Earth's surface. Mountains covered in ice and snow, deserts where temperatures reached deadly extremes, oceans that could crush most life forms under their pressure. It means that Earth is actively trying to kill everything that lives on it. The weather, the animals, the plants, the diseases, even the air pressure changes can be fatal to most galactic species. Rex studied the images with growing alarm. Your people evolved on this world? Not just evolved, Admiral. We thrived. Humans spread across every continent, every climate zone, every environment that Earth could create. We learned to survive in places where the temperature drops low enough to freeze most biological fluids solid. We learned to live at altitudes where there is barely enough oxygen to breathe. We swim in water that would crush your bones and climb mountains just for entertainment. Vel's blue scales darkened with concern. Entertainment? Oh, yes. Kane continued, clearly enjoyed the alien reactions. Humans engage in activities for fun that would be considered extreme survival training by most species. We jump out of aircraft for pleasure. We climb vertical rock faces without safety equipment. Some humans run for over 26 miles without stopping, just to see if they can. Kane switches display to show Earth's wildlife. Images of massive predators with razor-sharp teeth, venomous creatures smaller than a finger that could kill in minutes, and insects that could strip flesh from bone in hours. These are some of the creatures that humans evolved alongside. Kane explained, we shared our world with predators that make your hive drones look gentle. The average human child learns to identify dozens of plants and animals that could kill them before they reach adult age. Admiral Rex felt his telepathic crown flickering with distress. How do your people survive? We adapt, Kane said simply. Human immune systems are designed to fight off diseases that would kill most galactic life forms in hours. Our bones are dense enough to withstand impacts that would shatter other species. Our muscles and cardiovascular systems are built for endurance hunting, chasing prey across vast distances until it collapses from exhaustion. A commotion outside the command center interrupted their conversation. Through the doorway, they could see human soldiers working on some kind of equipment. Sergeant Lopez was connecting Coalition energy weapons to human projectile systems, creating hybrid devices that no engineer from either species had designed. What is he doing? Vel asked. Improvising, Kane replied. Humans are very good at taking existing technology and modify it for new purposes. We call it making do or jury-rigging. It comes from millions of years of using whatever tools were available to survive. They watched as Lopez tested his modified weapon. The device fired a Coalition energy beam wrapped around a human kinetic projectile. When it struck a piece of hive bioarmor, the armor didn't just crack, it disintegrated. Rex turned back to Kane. Your people created that weapon in what, an hour? Probably less, Kane said. Lopez is trained as a combat engineer, but most humans learn basic mechanical and technical skills as children. We have to. Our world doesn't provide anything easily. Every tool, every shelter, every source of food or water has to be taken from an environment that's actively hostile. A human medic approach, carrying a stretcher. On it lay Private Johnson, who had been exposed to a high bioweapon during the morning's fighting. Coalition medical staff had pronounced him dead after scanning showed the alien toxin in his bloodstream. Johnson sat up on the stretcher and looked around. Doc, can I get back to my squad? I feel fine. Kane scanned Johnson with his medical equipment, while Rex and Vel watched in shock. The hive bioweapon was still in the human system, but his body was neutralizing it faster than it could cause damage. How is he alive? Vel whispered. Human immune system, Kane explained. We evolved on a world where deadly toxins are common. Snake venom, plant poisons, bacterial infections, viral diseases. The human body is essentially a biological warfare laboratory, constantly fighting off threats that would kill most species instantly. Johnson stood up and stretched. Thanks, document. I'll try to avoid getting poisoned again. As the private walked away, Rex grabbed Kane's arm. Doctor, how many humans are there on Earth? About 8 billion. And how many are in your military? Kane thought for a moment. Active military forces, maybe 50 million across all branches and planetary colonies. Rex did the calculation in his head. The human military represented less than 1% of their total population. If the soldiers they were seeing represented such a small fraction of humanity, what was the rest of their species capable of? Dr. Kane, Vel said slowly, when your people applied for Coalition membership, why didn't you explain what kind of species you were? Kane looked genuinely confused by the question. We did. We provided complete biological and environmental data about Earth and human capabilities. It was all in our application. But your planet was classified as primitive. Technologically, yes. Kane agreed. We're newcomers to space travel and energy weapons. But biologically, he gestured toward the human soldiers moving through the command center. We're exactly what evolution creates when it spends millions of years trying to build the perfect survivor. Outside, the sound of battle continued as human forces pushed deeper into Hive territory. Coalition soldiers who had been retreating for months were now advancing alongside their human allies, watching in amazement as creatures they had feared proved unable to effectively fight against Deathworld predators. Rex realized that the Coalition had made a fundamental error in their assessment of humanity. They had judged the humans by their technology and missed a far more important factor. Earth had spent millions of years creating the perfect soldiers, and humans didn't even realize how unusual they were. The impossible mission. The main Hive bio-ship hung in orbit above KTH Prime, like a massive organic tumor against the stars. Commander Vell watched it through the Coalition Command Center's main display, knowing that somewhere inside that living vessel was a Hive Queen, the creature that controlled every drone on the planet below. Admiral, human forces are requesting permission to board the Hive ship. Lieutenant Nix reported, his voice tinged with awe. Admiral Rex turned from a tactical display, where he had been watching human ground forces systematically destroy Hive positions across 3 continents. In 12 hours, the humans had accomplished what Coalition forces had failed to do in 3 months of fighting. Board the ship? Rex asked, incredulous. That's suicide. The bio-ship's interior is filled with toxic atmosphere. The temperature inside reaches levels that would kill most life forms, and there are thousands of Hive drones protecting the Queen. Sir, the human commander says they have a plan. Rex activated his communicator. Colonel Davis, this is Admiral Rex. I cannot authorize a boarding action on the Hive ship. The environment alone would kill your people within minutes. Davis's voice came through the speaker with the same calm, almost attached tone he had used since arriving. Admiral, my people are equipped for hostile environment operations. We've done this kind of mission before. Against enemy ships. Against worse things. We're launching in 30 minutes. Rex looked at Commander Vell, who could only shake his head in amazement. These humans seemed to view impossible missions as routine operations. Into the belly of the beast, Lieutenant Maya led the boarding party of 20 human soldiers toward the Hive bio-ship in 2 small attack craft. The Coalition had provided environmental suits designed for their own species, but the humans had modified them with typical human adaptability. They added extra oxygen tanks, reinforced the joints, and installed their own communication systems. Maya, what's your status? Colonel Davis asked over the radio. Approaching the target. Sir, the bio-ship's surface is showing signs of defensive response. Through her helmet display, Maya could see the Hive ship's organic hull rippling and changing color as it detected their approach. Defensive spines began growing from the surface, and weapon ports opened like infected wounds. Defensive fire incoming. Sergeant Smith reported from the second craft. The Hive ship began shooting streams of corrosive bioplasma at the human attack craft. Maya watched the energy beams pass close enough to her ship to melt the outer hull plating. Any Coalition pilot would have retreated at this point, calling the mission impossible. Maya increased her speed and flew directly at the largest weapon port. Maya, what are you doing? Davis's voice crackled through the radio. Creating an entrance, sir. The human attack craft slammed into the Hive ship's weapon port at full speed. The organic opening collapsed around the small vessel, creating a tunnel through the bio-ship's defensive systems. Maya and her team emerged from their damaged craft, wearing full environmental suits and carrying enough firepower to level a small building. The interior of the Hive ship was like walking inside a living nightmare. The walls pulsed with alien circulation systems. The floor was covered in a substance that felt like walking on raw meat. The air was thick with spores and toxins that would have killed most galactic species instantly. Temperature is reading 200 degrees Celsius. Private Wilson reported through his suit radio. Atmospheric composition is 90% methane with trace amounts of sulfur compounds. suits holding. Maya asked, "So far, Lieutenant, though I'm getting some readings that suggest the local bacteria are trying to eat through our equipment." Maya smiled inside her helmet. Earth's military had trained for operations in environments ranging from the deepest ocean trenches to the surface of active volcanoes. A high bioship was unpleasant, but it wasn't the worst place humans had fought. The team moved deeper into the ship, following passages that seemed to grow and change around them. The hive ship was alive in ways that Coalition technology couldn't match. It adapted to their presence, trying to block their path or channel them into defensive positions. The humans adapted faster. Sergeant Smith used explosive charges to blow through walls that tried to close around them. Private Wilson identified weak points in the ship structure by comparing it to biological systems he had studied in Earth's military training. Maya navigated through the changing passages by using skills that humans had developed over millions of years of hunting in complex environments. They reached the ship's core in less than an hour. The Hive Queen was waiting for them. She was enormous, easily 3 times the size of the largest Hive drone, with psychic abilities that had driven Coalition soldiers insane during previous encounters. Her presence filled the chamber with a telepathic pressure that felt like standing next to an active volcano. She attacked their minds immediately. The psychic assault struck the human soldiers like a physical blow. Maya felt the alien intelligence trying to tear apart her consciousness, flooding her thoughts with images of death and despair. The Hive Queen had broken the minds of every Coalition soldier who had faced her. Human minds were different. Maya pushed back against the psychic attack, using mental disciplines that humans had developed through millions of years of surviving in hostile environments. The human brain, evolved to handle extreme stress and life-threatening situations, didn't shatter under pressure. It focused. Plant the charges. Maya ordered through gritted teeth. Her team moved through the chamber, while the Hive Queen continued her psychic assault. Wilson placed nuclear charges around the ship's core systems while Smith and the others established a defensive perimeter. The human soldiers fought through telepathic attacks that would have killed most species, treating the mental assault as just another environmental hazard to overcome. The Hive Queen realized that her psychic abilities were not affecting the humans as expected. She called for her drone guards, filling the chamber with dozens of 8-foot-tall warriors designed to protect her at all costs. The humans had been expecting this. Maya's team opened fire with weapons that combined human kinetic technology with Coalition energy systems. The hybrid weapons tore through Hive bioarmor like paper. Nuclear charges are set. Wilson reported. 10 minutes to detonation. Maya, what's your status? Colonel Davis asked over the radio. Mission complete, sir. We're heading home. The team fought their way back through the changing passages of the bioship, leaving behind a nuclear weapon that would destroy the Hive Queen and the enemy's command structure. They moved with the efficiency of predators who had evolved to hunt in groups, covering each other's movements and adapting to every obstacle the ship placed in their path. They reached their extraction point with 3 minutes to spare. As the human attack craft pulled away from the Hive bioship, Maya looked back at the massive organic vessel. In 60 seconds, it would be destroyed by technology that the Coalition considered primitive and barbaric. Nuclear weapons were banned by most civilized species as too dangerous for military use. Humans considered them standard equipment. The dawn of a new age. A blinding explosion lit up the space around KTH Prime like a new star. The Hive Queen died instantly, and with her, the psychic connection that coordinated every Hive drone in the system. On the planet below, thousands of enemy soldiers suddenly stopped moving, their collective intelligence severed. Admiral Rex watched the explosion from the Coalition Command Center, finally understanding what Captain Torres had meant when he said that Earth was sending help. The humans hadn't just provided military assistance. They had brought the tools and techniques of a species that had survived on a world where everything was designed to kill them. The Coalition had asked for reinforcements and received something far more valuable. They had learned that the galaxy contained allies who viewed impossible missions as routine operations. The cleanup operations on KTH Prime took 3 days. Admiral Rex walked through the capital city, watching human soldiers work alongside Coalition forces to clear debris and search for survivors. The contrast between the two groups was impossible to ignore. Coalition troops moved carefully through the ruined streets, checking their environmental suits and monitoring their exposure to local hazards. The humans worked in simple uniforms, breathing the polluted air without concern. "Admiral, the final casualty reports are ready," Commander Vell said, approaching with a data pad in his hands. Rex took the report and read through the numbers. Coalition forces had lost 60% of their remaining troops during the 3-day battle. The humans had lost less than 5% of their force, despite leading every major assault. "How is this possible?" Rex asked quietly. "I have been studying their combat recordings," Vell replied. "The humans fight differently than any species I have encountered. They do not retreat when wounded. They do not panic when surrounded. They treat each battle as if their survival depends on winning." Rex watched a group of human medics treating injured Coalition soldiers. The humans worked with efficient precision, using medical techniques that seemed primitive but proved remarkably effective. One medic was explaining to a Culturan officer how to treat infection using something called antibiotics. "Their medicine is also strange," Vell continued. "They use chemical compounds to fight disease instead of energy healing. Yet their methods work better than our advanced systems against high bioweapons." Colonel Davis approached the 2 Coalition officers, carrying his helmet under one arm. His uniform was torn and stained from 3 days of combat, but he moved with the same calm confidence he had shown when first arriving. "Admiral Rex, we need to discuss the remaining Hive ships in this system," Davis said. Rex consulted his tactical display. Long-range sensors show 7 bioships retreating toward the outer planets. "Our remaining forces are not sufficient to pursue them." "My ships can handle it," Davis replied. "But I wanted to coordinate with your people first. This is Coalition space, after all." Rex stared at the human colonel. 7 Hive bioships represented enough firepower to destroy most planetary defense fleets. Davis was suggesting that 15 human vessels could handle them alone. "Colonel, perhaps it would be better to wait for additional Coalition reinforcements." Davis smiled, showing his teeth in the expression that Rex was beginning to understand meant genuine amusement rather than aggression. "Admiral, with respect, we've been fighting creatures like this for millions of years. The Hive is dangerous, but they're not the worst thing Earth has produced." "What could be worse than the Hive?" Vell asked, his scales rippling with curiosity. "Humans," Davis said simply, "when we're really angry." A new alliance. 6 hours later, Rex watched through long-range sensors as the human fleet engaged the retreating Hive ships near the system's outer gas giant. The battle was over in less than 20 minutes. The human vessels used tactics that no Coalition strategist had ever considered, coordinating kinetic bombardments with energy weapons in patterns that overwhelmed Hive defenses. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission from Earth Command," Lieutenant Nix announced from the communication station. Rex activated the main display, expecting to see another human military officer. Instead, he found himself looking at a human female in civilian clothing. She appeared older than the soldiers he had been working with gray hair and eyes that suggested extensive experience. "This is Director Walsh of Earth Diplomatic Corps," the woman said. "I understand that our military forces have been assisting Coalition operations in your region." "Yes, Director Walsh. Your people have been extremely effective." Walsh nodded. "I'm calling to discuss the long-term implications of this cooperation. Earth is interested in expanding our role within the Coalition, particularly in defense matters." Rex felt his crystalline skin flicker with uncertainty. The humans had just demonstrated military capabilities that exceeded anything the Coalition possessed. If they wanted to expand their influence, there was very little anyone could do to stop them. "What kind of expansion are you considering?" Rex asked carefully. "Earth would like to establish joint training programs with Coalition military forces," Walsh explained. "We believe our experience with hostile environments and asymmetric warfare could benefit your people. In exchange, we would appreciate access to Coalition energy weapon technology and star charts for the Outer Rim territories." Rex exchanged glances with Commander Vell. The humans were offering to teach Coalition forces how to fight more effectively in exchange for technology and information. It was a generous offer from a species that could probably take whatever they wanted by force. "Director Walsh, may I ask why Earth is interested in the Outer Rim territories?" Walsh's expression became more serious. Admiral, Earth's long-range surveys have identified several other species that appear to originate from high-gravity, hostile environment worlds. We call them Deathworld species. Most of them are currently classified as primitive by Coalition standards. You want to contact them? We want to invite them to join the Coalition, Walsh said. The galaxy is a dangerous place, Admiral. The Hive was just one threat among many. Having more allies who understand survival and warfare could benefit everyone. Rex considered this. The thought of more human-like species joining the Coalition was both exciting and terrifying. If other Deathworld species possess similar capabilities, the balance of power in the galaxy would shift dramatically. How many of these Deathworld species have you identified? Vel asked. 17 confirmed, with possible indicators of 12 more. Walsh replied. Most of them are isolated on single worlds, dealing with local threats that would challenge even human forces. They could use allies. Rex realized that the humans were not seeking to dominate the Coalition. They were trying to build it into something stronger, something capable of handling threats that energy weapons and advanced technology could not solve. Director Walsh, Earth's proposal is acceptable to Coalition Command, Rex said. We would be honored to learn from your people. The new frontier. After the transmission ended, Rex stood in the command center, looking out at the stars. 3 days ago, he had commanded a failing defense against an unstoppable enemy. Now, he was part of an alliance that included species capable of treating impossible missions as routine operations. Colonel Davis appeared beside him, still carrying his helmet, and looking like he had just finished a training exercise rather than a galactic war. Colonel, may I ask you something? Rex said, Of course, Admiral. When your people received our distress signal, did you know what you were getting into? Davis considered the question seriously. We knew people were dying and someone needed help. The rest was just details to work out. Rex watched through the viewport as human ships moved through the system, conducting search and rescue operations for survivors on outer planets. These creatures from Earth had traveled across the galaxy to help strangers fight an enemy they had never encountered, using weapons their own allies considered primitive. The Coalition had asked for reinforcements and received something unprecedented. Partners who viewed the survival of others as their own responsibility. Rex realized that the galaxy had just become a much safer place, and a much more dangerous one for anyone who threatened innocent life. This is just the beginning. The age of the Deathworlders has begun. What kind of threats do you think these new allies will face together? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more tales from the stars.
The air on the bridge of the Kian flagship crackled with tension. Supreme Commander Zorak, his 4 eyes blazing with fury, stared at the flickering main view screen. His lieutenant, Vex, a deeper shade of violet than usual, stammered, "They are actually laughing, Supreme Commander. The humans are laughing at us." Zorak's eyes blinked rapidly, a sure sign of extreme agitation among the Kian. His upper appendages gripped the command chair so tightly that the reinforced metal began to warp. "Replay the transmission," he growled. The screen flickered to life, showing the face of a human woman with short auburn hair and eyes the color of Earth's oceans. Her name was Admiral Tessa Monroe, Supreme Commander of Earth's Defense Forces. A smirk played on her lips as she spoke, making no effort to hide her amusement. "Let me get this straight," she said. "You, the mighty Kian Empire, are declaring war on humanity because we refuse to give you exclusive mining rights to an uninhabited rock at the edge of our solar system?" Zorak's secondary heart began to pound. The audacity, the disrespect, the complete lack of terror. He had told her in the original transmission, "We are the Kian Empire. We have conquered 12 galaxies. Our warships blot out suns. Our soldiers number in the trillions. The 10,000-year peace treaty signed by your ancestors has expired, and we choose not to renew it. Surrender now or face extinction." And what had this human done? Laughed. Actually laughed. "You realize we've been watching you guys for the past 1,000 years, right?" Admiral Monroe continued in the recording. "We've been monitoring your communications, studying your technology, analyzing your tactics. The treaty wasn't for our protection. It was for yours." A stunned silence fell over the bridge. 50 of the Empire's highest-ranking officers stared at their Supreme Commander, awaiting his reaction. "She's bluffing," whispered Science Officer Krell, her voice barely audible. They must be bluffing. Are they? Zorak questioned, turning to his intelligence director Luruk. Explain this reaction. Why aren't they cowering? Why aren't they begging for mercy? They are just one species confined to a single solar system. Director Luruk stepped forward, his exoskeleton clicking nervously. Supreme Commander, our intelligence on humans is limited. The treaty prevented direct observation. We know they were primitive when we first encountered them. They had just achieved space flight. Their weapons were chemical-based. Their medicine still relied on cutting open bodies and stitching them back together. And now, demanded Zorak. We don't know, admitted Luruk. The treaty kept us 5 light-years away from their system at all times. We have detected unusual energy readings over the centuries, but nothing conclusive. It's possible they have advanced. Zorak snorted. In a mere 1,000 years? Impossible. No species develops that quickly. It took us 15,000 years to achieve interstellar travel. With all due respect, Commander, interrupted Fleet Admiral Dex, perhaps we should send a scout ship to assess their capabilities before committing to a full invasion. Cowardice, snapped Zorak. From my Fleet Admiral, no less. We are Kian. We do not scout. We do not assess. We conquer. But Supreme Commander, persisted Dex, her facial tentacles writhing with concern, if there's even a slight chance the human is telling the truth? Enough, roared Zorak, rising to his full height of 12 feet. Prepare the armada. All ships. All warriors. We will darken their skies. We will boil their oceans. We will remind these humans what it means to face the might of the Kian Empire. As the bridge officer scrambled to carry out his orders, Zorak turned back to the screen, studying the human's face. Admiral Monroe was still smirking. One more thing, she said in the recording just before cutting transmission. When you come, bring something interesting. We've been stuck in this solar system for 1,000 years with nothing to do but prepare for your return. We are really looking forward to seeing what you've got. The transmission ended, and Zorak felt a sensation he hadn't experienced in centuries. Was it doubt? He shook his massive head, dispelling the unwelcome feeling. Director Luruk, what is the human military capacity? Luruk consulted his data pad. Based on 1,000-year-old intelligence, they had approximately 50 million soldiers and 10,000 primitive spacecraft. And our forces? 10 trillion warriors across the Empire, with 500 million currently deployed on our capital ships. The Armada consists of 100,000 warships, each capable of reducing a planet's surface to magma. Zorak relaxed slightly. The numbers didn't lie. Even if they had advanced, they couldn't have matched that kind of military might. There's something else, Supreme Commander, said Luruk hesitantly, about the humans. Speak. In our initial assessments, we noted an unusual psychological trait. They respond to threats by becoming more aggressive rather than more submissive. And they have a strange relationship with their mortality. They know they will die, yet they act as if they are immortal. It makes their behavior unpredictable. Zorak waved a dismissive appendage. Psychological peculiarities won't save them from plasma cannons. Set course for the Sol system. Maximum velocity. As the mighty Kian Armada began to move, forming a swarm of destruction stretching across light years, Zorak couldn't shake the memory of the human's laugh. It wasn't the laugh of someone bluffing. It was the laugh of someone who knew something he didn't. And for the first time in his 300-year life, Supreme Commander Zorak felt a cold shiver run down his spine. The Kian Armada approaches. The journey to Earth took 3 standard weeks. 3 weeks of preparation, 3 weeks of battle simulations, 3 weeks of Zorak reassuring his commanders that this would be a swift and glorious conquest. 3 weeks of trying to forget the sound of human laughter. We are approaching the edge of the Sol system, Supreme Commander, announced Navigator Zell. Pluto orbit in 5 minutes. Zorak nodded, his silver ceremonial armor gleaming under the bridge lights. He had dressed for victory today. Any sign they have detected us? Communications Officer Trill checked her instruments. Nothing, Commander. No transmissions, no defensive preparations. Their system appears completely open. Overconfidence, huffed Zorak, the most reliable harbinger of defeat. As the Armada crossed the boundary of the Sol system, every Kian on the bridge waited for alarms, for human defenders to appear, for anything that would explain Admiral Monroe's baffling confidence. Nothing happened. Continue approach, ordered Zorak. Maintain battle formation. The Kian warships moved deeper into the system, passing the ice giants Neptune and Uranus without incident. When they reached Saturn, Zorak began to relax. Perhaps the humans really were bluffing. Perhaps they had simply gone insane during their 1,000 years of isolation. Supreme Commander, called Science Officer Krell suddenly, I'm detecting anomalous readings from Saturn's rings. Explain. The rings are moving, she said, confusion evident in her voice. Sections of them are changing position against orbital mechanics. Before Zorak could respond, the tactical display erupted with warnings. The rings of Saturn were breaking apart, but not randomly. They were reforming, shifting, transforming. It's not ice, whispered Krell. The rings, they are not ice and rock. They are ships. Finished Zorak, watching in horror as millions, no billions of tiny craft emerged from their perfect hiding place. They had been disguised as part of Saturn's rings, indistinguishable from natural debris until they moved. Incoming transmission, announced Trill, her voice shaking. The view screen activated, showing Admiral Monroe again. She was standing on what appeared to be a bridge similar to their own, but sleeker, more advanced. Welcome to Sol, Commander Zorak, she said cheerfully. I see you brought the whole family. How thoughtful. Zorak struggled to maintain his composure. What is the meaning of this deception? Where did these ships come from? Deception? Monroe raised an eyebrow. Oh, deception. Just preparation. As for the ships, we built them. All 10 billion of them. We had a lot of time on our hands, what with the peace treaty and all. Impossible, roared Zorak. No civilization could build so many vessels. Oh, that's right, you still build your ships by hand, don't you? How quaint, Monroe smiled. We automated that process about 800 years ago. These days, our fabricators can produce a fully functional warship every 1.3 seconds. You do the math. Zorak turned to his tactical officer. Weapons status. All systems ready, Supreme Commander. Target their fleet and fire. Monroe sighed on the screen. Really? That's your move? All right then. The Kian Armada unleashed its fury, 100,000 capital ships firing simultaneously at the swarm of human vessels. The vacuum of space lit up with energy weapons, a dazzling display of destructive power that would have annihilated any conventional force. But the human ships moved. They didn't just evade, they danced. They twisted and turned with impossible precision, some of them accelerating at speeds that should have liquefied any organic pilot. They are not manned, realized Krell. Those ships are autonomous. Correct again, said Monroe, still watching with apparent amusement. We call them the Swarm. Fully AI controlled. They've been running combat simulations against Kian tactics for about 900 years now. They're pretty good at it. Not a single human vessel had been hit. Not one. Our turn, said Monroe, her smile fading. Just a small demonstration. A group of human ships, perhaps 1,000 out of the billions, broke formation and accelerated toward the Kian fleet. They were tiny compared to the massive Kian warships, each no larger than a planetary shuttle. Defensive screens at maximum, ordered Zorak. The human vessels didn't fire. Instead, they simply passed through the Kian defense screens as if they weren't there. Then they made contact with the hulls of 20 Kian ships and phased right through the solid metal. Seconds later, those 20 Kian warships simply came apart at the molecular level, disintegrating into clouds of component atoms. The bridge of the Imperial flagship fell silent. These shift technology, explained Monroe casually, allows our ships to temporarily exist between states of matter. We figured it out while studying quantum mechanics. It's pretty useful. Hard to defend against something that can just ignore your defenses entirely. Zorak had no words. This wasn't just advanced technology. This was magic. Witchcraft. Science that defied comprehension. So, continued Monroe, clapping her hands together, here's my counteroffer. You take your fleet and go home. You renew the treaty, this time for 10,000 years, and we will pretend this little misunderstanding never happened. And if we refuse? Managed Zorak, his voice barely a whisper. Admiral Monroe's face turned serious for the first time. Then we will finish our demonstration and the Kian Empire will need to find a new Supreme Commander, and about 100,000 new warships. The humiliating retreat. Supreme Commander Zorak had never retreated in his entire 300-year military career. The concept was so foreign to Kian doctrine that their language lacked a proper word for it. The closest translation was strategic repositioning for future conquest, a phrase so rarely used that most officers didn't even know it existed. Yet here he was, ordering the most powerful armada in the universe to back away from a single star system. All ships reverse course, he commanded, each word tasting bitter on his tongue. Maintain defensive formation. No aggressive actions. His bridge officers exchanged shocked glances but carried out his orders without question. Even the most battle-hungry among them had witnessed the molecular disintegration of 20 Kian warships. None wished to share that fate. "The human vessels are holding position," reported Tactical Officer Jex. "They are not pursuing." On the view screen, Admiral Monroe nodded approvingly. "Wise choice, Commander. Your ships are free to leave unharmed." "This isn't over," growled Zorak. "The Kian Empire does not surrender." "Of course not," agreed Monroe, with a hint of that infuriating smirk returning. "You are just strategic repositioning for future conquest." "We understand completely." Zorak's upper eyes narrowed. "You speak our language?" "We speak all 3,177 languages used across the Kian Empire," she replied, "including the 22 classified military dialects. A linguistic analysis was one of our early research priorities." "You have been spying on us," accused Zorak despite the treaty. Admiral Monroe laughed again, that same confident laugh that had haunted him for weeks. "The treaty prevented us from approaching within 5 light-years of Kian space. It said nothing about remote observation. Remote observation across thousands of light-years. Impossible. Quantum entanglement communication," she explained as if talking to a child. "Instantaneous data transfer across unlimited distances. We have had tiny observation probes scattered throughout your empire for about 950 years now. They are about the size of a dust particle, so don't bother looking for them." Zorak felt his rage building, threatening to overwhelm his judgment. "You dare mock the greatest empire the universe has ever known?" "Greatest?" Monroe tilted her head thoughtfully. "By what metric? Territory? Sure, you've got us beat there. We've stayed in one solar system. But technology, resource efficiency, scientific understanding, medical advancement? I'm afraid you are lagging behind by several centuries." "You lie," roared Zorak. "No species advances so quickly." "Most don't," agreed Monroe. "But most species don't have our particular combination of short lifespans, intense curiosity, and existential dread. We knew we might face extinction at any moment. It's remarkable what humans can accomplish when properly motivated." As the Kian fleet continued its humiliating withdrawal, Director Lurik approached Zorak's command chair and spoke in hushed tones. "Supreme Commander, I have been analyzing the human vessels. Their energy signatures are unlike anything in our database. And their numbers, even with advanced automation, constructing billions of warships would require resources beyond what a single solar system should provide." "Your point, Director?" hissed Zorak. "I believe they have mastered matter conversion on a fundamental level. They are creating ships from raw energy, perhaps even from vacuum fluctuations. The scientific implications are staggering." Zorak absorbed this information with growing horror. If humans could create matter from energy at will, there was no limit to their military potential. They could produce endless armadas, endless weapons, endless soldiers. "Admiral Monroe," he said, forcing civility into his voice, "before we depart, I must ask, why did your ancestors sign the treaty in the first place? If not for protection, then for what purpose?" Monroe's expression softened slightly. "Honestly? Pity." "Pity?" repeated Zorak incredulously. "Our first contact specialist determined that your species represents a developmental dead end," she explained. "Your biological and cultural evolution has reached its apex. Without outside influence, you will remain technologically stagnant for millennia. Our ancestors thought giving you 1,000 years might help you advance independently, catch up a bit before we had to interact as equals. Evidently, that was overly optimistic." The bridge fell silent again. Not the silence of shock this time, but the silence of collective humiliation. Every officer, every warrior present felt the sting of her words, because deep down they recognized the truth in them. The Empire hadn't produced a significant technological advancement in generations. Their conquest had always been about appropriating the innovations of others, not creating their own. "We will return," promised Zorak, desperation making his voice crack. "We will study. We will advance. And we will return." "I truly hope you do," said Monroe, and for the first time, there seemed to be genuine sincerity in her voice. "The galaxy needs the Kian to evolve beyond conquest. There are threats out there that require cooperation, not competition. Threats that neither humans nor Kian can face alone." Zorak's 4 eyes blinked in confusion. "What threats?" "In 12 galaxies, we have encountered no species more powerful than ourselves." "Because they don't want to be found," said Monroe cryptically. "Not yet. But they are watching. Just as we have been watching you. Before Zorak could demand clarification, the massive human fleet began to move, not toward the retreating Kian, but into a complex formation that seemed to ripple through space itself. "What are they doing?" asked Krell, frantically checking her instruments. "I don't," began Lurik, then froze mid-sentence. "Supreme Commander, they are creating a gravitational anomaly. A massive one." On the view screen, the billions of human ships began to rotate in perfect synchronization, generating an artificial gravity well of impossible proportions. Space itself began to warp visibly. "This is just a small demonstration of what we can do," said Monroe. "A little something to remember us by." The swirling vortex of ships suddenly collapsed inward, and for a brief moment, it seemed as if a new star had been born. A blinding flash forced the view screen to darken automatically. When the light faded, where billions of ships had been, now floated a perfectly formed Saturn, rings and all. An exact duplicate of the gas giant, created in minutes. "Did they just make a planet?" whispered Navigator Zell, her voice tinged with religious awe. "We will be in touch, Commander Zorak," said Monroe, her image beginning to fade. "When you are ready for a real conversation about the future. Until then, I suggest you use your time wisely." As the transmission ended and the Kian armada limped away from the Sol system, Zorak remained motionless in his command chair, staring at the duplicate Saturn growing smaller on the view screen. For the first time in his life, he understood what it meant to be primitive. A new beginning for the galaxy. The return to Kian Prime took 3 months. 3 months of silence and shame. 3 months of Zorak locked in his quarters, reviewing everything they knew about humans, searching desperately for some weakness, some flaw in their seemingly godlike capabilities. He found none. When the Armada finally reached the Kian homeworld, Zorak expected to be stripped of his rank, possibly even executed for his failure. The Kian Empire did not tolerate defeat. But to his surprise, the High Council requested only a private audience, away from the prying eyes of the general population. "Tell us everything," commanded Arch-Councilor Vexer, the oldest living Kian and nominal head of the Empire. "Leave nothing out." Zorak recounted the entire humiliating encounter. The humans' laughter, the hidden fleet, the phase shift technology, the matter creation of the duplicate Saturn. With each revelation, the council members' expressions grew more grave. "And these humans claim there are greater threats than themselves?" asked Councilor Dries when he had finished. "Yes, Councilor, though they provided no specifics." "A bluff, perhaps?" suggested Councilor Krell. "A tactic to prevent us from focusing our efforts on defeating them." Zorak shook his head. "I do not believe so. The human admiral had no reason to fabricate such a claim. They had already demonstrated their superiority." "Then what do you propose, Supreme Commander?" asked Vexer, leaning forward. "What course of action serves the Empire best in this unprecedented situation?" Zorak had spent 3 months considering this question. His answer would determine not just his fate, but potentially the fate of the entire Kian species. "I propose we learn," he said simply. "Learn?" repeated Vexer. "Elaborate." "The humans were right about us," admitted Zorak, the words physically painful to speak. "We have become stagnant, complacent. For 10,000 years, we have conquered rather than created, stolen technology rather than developing our own. It has left us vulnerable." Murmurs of outrage rippled through the council chamber, but Vexer raised a gnarled hand for silence. "Continue." "I propose a fundamental restructuring of imperial priorities," said Zorak. "Less focus on military expansion, more on scientific advancement. We must close the technological gap between ourselves and the humans." "You suggest we abandon conquest?" growled Councilor Traz, "the very foundation of our society." "Not abandon," clarified Zorak. "Postpone. For a century, perhaps 2. Dedicate those resources to research and development instead." "And what of the humans in the meantime?" asked Vexer. "What if they choose to leave their solar system to conquer as we have conquered?" "They won't," said Zorak with certainty. "If conquest were their ambition, they would have begun 1,000 years ago. They possess a different kind of power, one we don't yet understand." The council chambers fell silent as the assembled leaders contemplated his words. And finally Vexer spoke. "There is wisdom in your proposal, Supreme Commander. Unsettling wisdom, but wisdom nonetheless." The ancient Kian's 4 eyes fixed on Zorak. "But such a fundamental shift will face resistance. Many will call it cowardice." "Let them," said Zorak firmly. "I have seen what awaits us if we continue on our current path. A war we cannot win. Extinction perhaps. I would rather suffer accusations of cowardice than lead our species to annihilation." Vexer nodded slowly. "Very well. We will put it to a vote. But first there is one more matter to address. He motioned to a guard who activated a communication panel. Bring in the visitor. The chamber doors slid open, and to Zorak's astonishment, a human entered. Not Admiral Monroe but a male, tall and lean with dark skin and close-cropped hair. He wore no military uniform, only simple clothing in earth colors. This is Dr. Jackson Webb, introduced Vexer. He arrived yesterday alone, in a vessel no larger than a personal shuttle. How did he reach Kian Prime? Demanded Zorak. Our defenses were quite impressive, interrupted Dr. Webb pleasantly. I particularly liked the autonomous mines and the Cygnus approach. Very creative. Supreme Commander Zorak, I presume? Continued Webb, approaching with an extended hand. After a moment of confusion, Zorak reluctantly extended his own appendage, and the human clasped it briefly. Admiral Monroe sends her regards. Why are you here, human? Growled Zorak. To offer assistance, replied Webb simply. And to deliver this. He handed Zorak a small device, no larger than a Kian data crystal. It pulsed with a soft blue light. What is it? The complete scientific and technological history of humanity, said Webb. Every discovery, every invention, every theoretical framework. From the wheel to phase shift technology. Everything except weapons, of course. Those you will have to figure out yourselves if you are so inclined. Zorak stared at the tiny device in disbelief. Why would you give us this? Webb smiled, and Zorak was struck by how similar it was to Monroe's expression. Not quite a smirk, but close. The smile of a species utterly confident in its position. Because evolution requires competition, explained Webb. For the past 1,000 years humans have had none. We have advanced quickly, yes, but without external pressure, without diverse perspectives. We have become inbred, intellectually speaking. You want us as competitors? Asked Zorak skeptically. We want you as colleagues, corrected Webb. Partners in the greater project of galactic civilization. The threats Admiral Monroe mentioned, they are real, and they will require more than just human innovation to overcome. Vexer leaned forward again. What threats precisely? Webb's expression turned somber. There are spaces between galaxies where light behaves strangely. Regions where the fundamental laws of physics flex. We have been studying them for centuries. Something is coming. Something old. Something that considers both our species nothing more than passing bacteria on a cosmic petri dish. And you believe the Kian Empire would aid humanity against such a threat? Asked Counselor Dries incredulously, after your humiliation of our fleet? I believe you will aid yourselves, replied Webb. Self-preservation is a powerful motivator, common to both our species. And I believe that, given time and this, he nodded at the device in Zorak's hand, you might actually become the allies we need. Zorak looked down at the tiny crystal containing millennia of human knowledge. It would change everything. The balance of power within the empire, the social hierarchies, the economic systems, their entire way of life. It would also save them from obsolescence. We accept your offering, Dr. Webb, said Zorak finally. And your challenge. And your challenge, Webb nodded, seemingly satisfied. Excellent. In that case, I'm authorized to propose a new treaty. Not one of separation this time, but of limited cooperation. Scientific exchange, cultural dialogue, preparation for what's coming. And military matters? Asked Zorak cautiously. Webb's expression turned serious again. Let's just say that how quickly we share our defensive technologies will depend entirely on how quickly you abandon your offensive ambitions. The implication was clear. The humans were offering a path forward, but not unconditional trust. That would have to be earned. As the council debated the terms of this unprecedented treaty, Zorak found himself studying the human, not with hatred or resentment now, but with curiosity. How had they advanced so quickly? What drove them to explore rather than conquer? What could the mighty Kian Empire learn from a species confined to a single solar system? And most puzzling of all, why did they still laugh in the face of threats? Even now, as Webb caught his gaze, there was that same hint of amusement, that same inexplicable confidence. Perhaps, Zorak reflected, that would be the first mystery they would solve. The peculiar psychology of a species that responded to declarations of war not with fear, not with anger, but with laughter. For the first time since his humiliating retreat from Earth, Zorak felt something new stirring within him. Not thirst for vengeance, not shame, but something he hadn't experienced since his youth, when he'd first looked up at the stars and wondered what lay beyond. Curiosity. And as Dr. Webb began explaining his proposal for joint research initiatives, Zorak found himself, against all odds, looking forward to the future. A future where perhaps the Kian Empire might become something more than conquerors. Something worthy of standing alongside humanity when the real war began.
You think you know humanity? You think we're all about the gadgets, the flashy tech, the latest space race? What if I told you the greatest secret in the galaxy has been hiding in plain sight, and it's about to blow your mind? The first impression. Imagine this. A ship, sleek and crystalline, shimmers into our solar system. The Centurion flagship, Star Weaver, is here for routine first contact. Ambassador Ron, all iridescent scales and diplomatic composure, is ready to welcome another baby civilization to the galactic playground. His science officer, Tekla, is buzzing, her tentacles waving frantically at her console. Ambassador, I'm detecting inconsistencies. Tekla practically shrieked. Their technology levels don't align. They're using primitive fossil fuels right alongside antimatter containment fields. Basic electrical grids next to quantum entanglement comms. It's like they're deliberately mixing primitive and advanced tech. Ron tried to brush it off. Perhaps they just developed unevenly? But even as he said it, his scales rippled with doubt. 3 centuries of diplomatic service, and he'd never seen anything like this. As they got closer to Earth, the anomalies piled up. Humans had detected their arrival instantly, despite supposedly having no advanced sensors. The designated landing site in a place called Nevada was perfectly calibrated for their ship. Yet Earth supposedly had never seen an alien vessel before. And the welcoming committee? Not a media circus, no military parade, no panic crowds. Just 3 humans, 2 women, 1 man, waiting calmly in the scorching desert heat. I don't like this, Tekla muttered. Their behavior doesn't match any first contact protocols we've encountered. Ron silently agreed, but they were committed. The ramp descended. Ron, ever the diplomat, prepared his carefully crafted speech about galactic community and welcome. The words died in his throat. One of the humans stepped forward. "Welcome to Earth, Ambassador Ron," she said, in perfect Centurion, not a single mispronounced syllable. "I'm Dr. Emily Chun, Earth's diplomatic liaison. I trust your journey through the Orion Spur was pleasant. The solar winds can be quite turbulent this time of year." Ron's secondary heart skipped a beat. They hadn't told Earth their route. How did she know about the solar winds in their sector? "You speak our language?" he stammered, trying to keep his composure. Dr. Chin just smiled. A warm, disarming smile. "We find it's helpful to be prepared. Shall we head inside? We prepare a facility that matches Centurion atmospheric preferences. Though I should warn you, our technology might seem a bit eclectic." The facility looked like a simple concrete bunker, but Ron's personal scanner screamed. Energy readings that shouldn't be possible. The door creaked open with an old-fashioned mechanical handle, but the air inside was perfectly calibrated for Centurion physiology, down to the tiniest trace elements. "Please make yourselves comfortable." Dr. Chin gestured a chair that looked like plain metal, but somehow automatically adjusted to support Centurion anatomy. "Would you like refreshments? We've synthesized your traditional welcoming drink, though some visitors prefer our human coffee." Tekla's tentacles coiled tight. How could you possibly know how to synthesize that? "Trial and error," the male human interjected with a gentle smile. He introduced himself as Dr. James Martinez, their technological advisor. "We're quite good at figuring things out." Ron accepted a cup of the dark human beverage. The ceramic mug, seemingly so simple, maintained the liquid at precisely the right temperature without any visible tech. Every detail screamed that they were missing something enormous about humanity. "I believe," Dr. Chin said, settling into her own chair, "you have questions. Let's start with the one you haven't asked yet. Why would a civilization capable of synthesizing Centurion biochemistry and building quantum-adjusted atmospheric systems pretend to be struggling with fossil fuels?" Ron's scales shifted to deep purple. "Shock. You're admitting to deception?" "Deception implies harmful intent." The 3rd human spoke for the first time. She introduced herself as General Sarah Williams. "We prefer to think of it as maintaining perspective. Sometimes the old ways have value, Ambassador. Not every problem requires the most advanced solution." "But why?" Tekler practically screamed. Why deliberately appear primitive? Dr. Chen's smile softened, taking on a hint of sadness. Because true wisdom isn't about having the most advanced technology. It's about knowing when and how to use it. Humanity learned that lesson a long, long time ago. Perhaps it's time we helped others learn it too. As if on cue, alarms began to blare throughout the facility. General Williams checked a device that looked like a simple wristwatch, but displayed a holographic readout that surpassed anything in the Centurion fleet. Right on schedule, she said grimly. Ambassador, it seems the universe has decided to show rather than tell. We're detecting multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace. Raiders from the Xan Expanse. They've been targeting developing worlds, and they believe Earth is defenseless. Dr. Chen stood, her pleasant diplomatic demeanor vanishing, replaced by something ancient and powerful. Would you like to see what humanity is really capable of, Ambassador? We've been protecting younger civilizations from threats like this for longer than your people have been traveling the stars. Ron watched in stunned silence as the simple concrete walls around him shimmered, then dissolved, revealing a command center that made his flagship's bridge look like a child's toy. The truth about humanity was about to become very clear, and he suspected the galaxy would never be the same. The true power. The Xan Raiders never knew what hit them. Their ships, bristling with weapons that could level cities, simply stopped. No explosions, no dramatic battles. They just froze in space, as if caught in invisible amber. Localized space-time manipulation field, Dr. Martinez explained casually to the stunned Centurion delegation. Much cleaner than weapons. Less paperwork, too. Ambassador Ron watched as the Raider ships were gently guided into a holding pattern around Earth's moon. His scales had shifted to pure white, a sign of complete astonishment in his species. You possess technology that can control space-time itself, yet your cities still burn fossil fuels? Among other things, General Williams replied, her fingers dancing over what looked like an ancient mechanical keyboard, but somehow controlled the most advanced systems Ron had ever seen. The Raiders are secure, Dr. Chen. Shall we move to Phase 2? Dr. Chen nodded, turning to their visitors. Ambassador, we've been concealing ourselves for millennia, guiding younger civilizations from the shadows. But something is coming, something that requires us to be more direct in our approach. Before Ron could respond, a new alert flashed across the command center screens. Light years away, at the edge of Centurion space, an archaeological team had just made a discovery that would shatter the galaxy's understanding of history. The team's leader, Dr. Vexa, stared at her findings in disbelief. The artifacts she'd uncovered weren't just predating known civilization. They were human in origin. Her hands trembled as she activated her quantum communicator. Central Authority, she reported, her voice laced with awe. I found evidence that humans were among the stars when my people were still learning to make fire. The command center in Nevada displayed her transmission in real time. Dr. Chen smiled softly. Right on schedule, Ambassador. Would you like to know why we've maintained our technological masquerade for so long? She gestured, and the facility's walls became transparent, revealing vast underground complexes stretching for miles in every direction. Ancient ships, temporal observatories, and technologies that defied description stood alongside simple steam engines and internal combustion motors. Humanity reached the stars millions of years ago, Dr. Martinez explained. We built empires, fought wars that made stars go dark, wielded power that no species should possess. And then we realized something that nearly destroyed us. Technology without wisdom is a path to extinction. General Williams pulled up historical records that made Tekler's tentacles curl in shock. We nearly wiped ourselves out dozens of times before we understood. True advancement isn't about having the most powerful tools. It's about knowing when not to use them. Across the galaxy, more discoveries were pouring in. Human artifacts, millions of years old, found on thousands of worlds. Each piece telling the same story, an ancient civilization that had reached godlike power and chosen to step back. We established Earth as a preserve, Dr. Chen continued, her voice resonating with centuries of purpose. A place to remember our roots, to maintain perspective. Those fossil fuel plants you mentioned, They remind us of the cost of progress without foresight. The simple machines teach us humility. Every piece of primitive technology serves a purpose in our development program. Development program? Ron asked, his diplomatic training struggling to process the implications. For ourselves and for others, Dr. Martinez smiled. We've been guiding younger species, helping them avoid our mistakes. Those raiders we just stopped, they'll wake up tomorrow with no memory of the incident, but with mysterious new understanding of why conquest isn't the answer. Suddenly, every screen in the facility lit up with urgent warnings. Dr. Chen's expression turned grave. And now you understand why we're revealing ourselves. Something is awakening out there. Something we fought eons ago. Something that requires us to stop hiding and start preparing the galaxy's younger races for what's coming. The images on the screen showed a darkness spreading between the stars, a void that consumed light itself. General Williams' ancient-looking wristwatch projected a countdown that made the humans' expressions turn grim. Ambassador, Dr. Chen said softly, your people call yourselves a Centurion Alliance, masters of known space. But there are regions of space that aren't known. Threats that we've been holding back since before your ancestors discovered fire. It's time for humanity to step out of the shadows, not as conquerors, but as teachers. And if we refuse your guidance? Tekler asked, her scientific skepticism warring with the evidence before her. Dr. Martinez chuckled. My dear, you've been accepting our guidance for centuries. Every mysterious scientific breakthrough, every seemingly impossible leap in understanding, we've been there, nudging, suggesting, protecting. The only difference now is that we're telling you about it. As if to emphasize his point, a section of the facility's floor became transparent, revealing a vast chamber filled with ships that made the Centurion flagship look like a primitive canoe. Yet, among these marvels stood museums of simple machines, preserved as carefully as any ancient treasure. The question isn't whether you'll accept our guidance, General Williams said, her eyes fixed on the spreading darkness in the long-range scans. The question is whether the galaxy's younger races are ready to learn what humanity discovered millions of years ago. The most advanced civilization isn't the one with the most powerful weapons. It's the one wise enough to know when not to use them. The facility's alarms began to sing in harmony, a sound that somehow conveyed both warning and hope. Humanity's masquerade was ending, and the true history of the galaxy was about to be rewritten. The Wall of Time, deep within Earth's Mariana Trench, in a facility that bent light around itself, Commander Maya Patil gazed at the Wall of Time. Thousands of holographic displays showed pivotal moments across the galaxy, civilizations taking their first steps into space, species on the brink of self-destruction, and countless moments where humanity's hidden hand had gently nudged the cosmos toward wisdom rather than catastrophe. Status report, she commanded, her simple cotton uniform belying her authority over technology that could reshape reality. The Centurion delegation is processing the revelation well. Her AI companion, Delta, responded, its avatar manifesting as a simple blue light. Another example of humanity's deliberate technological restraint. Dr. Chun is preparing to show them the archives. Maya nodded, watching as another screen showed Dr. Vex's archaeological team uncovering more human artifacts. The young alien scientist discoveries were no accident. Humanity had been carefully orchestrating this revelation for centuries. They're ready for Phase 3, Maya decided. Initialize the Awakening Protocol. Across the galaxy, seemingly dormant human technology began to stir. Not weapons or warships, but something far more powerful. Knowledge, carefully preserved and protected until the younger races were ready to understand it. Back in Nevada, Ambassador Ron and Tekler followed Dr. Chun through a doorway that shouldn't have been possible. A simple wooden door that somehow connected Nevada to the heart of Mount Everest. This is the first archive, Dr. Chen explained as they entered a vast chamber carved into the mountain's core. We maintain similar facilities across Earth and throughout the galaxy, each preserving different aspects of our history and knowledge. The chamber was a study in contradictions. Quantum computers operated alongside abacuses. Digital displays shared space with paper books. And at the center, a simple wooden table held what appeared to be an ordinary cup of water. Your first test, Dr. Martinez said, gesturing to the cup. "Tell us what you see." Tekla waved her analytical tentacles over the cup. "It's just water." "No, wait." Her instruments were reporting impossible readings. "This water is perfect, molecularly perfect. Every atom aligned with mathematical precision that shouldn't be possible." "The simplest things are often the most profound," General Williams remarked. "This cup demonstrates why humanity chose to step back from godlike power. We learned to create perfect water, yes. But in doing so, we almost forgot the beauty of a raindrop." The chamber's walls shifted, revealing humanity's true history. They watched as human civilization rose and fell multiple times, each cycle reaching further into the cosmos, wielding greater power, until finally achieving something beyond mere technological supremacy: wisdom. "We were like children with fusion bombs," Dr. Martinez explained. "We could split atoms before we truly understood why we shouldn't. We could reshape planets before we learned to cherish them as they were. Each time we fell, we rose again until we finally understood the responsibility that comes with power." Suddenly, alarms echoed through the facility, but these were different from the earlier warnings. These sounds carried an ancient weight that made even humans pause. "The Void Heralds," General Williams announced grimly. "Their awakening is faster than we predicted." The chamber's displays shifted to show the spreading darkness between the stars, but now Ron and Tekla could see what they hadn't before: patterns in the void, purpose in the darkness. This wasn't just some natural phenomenon. It was a return of something that humanity had fought eons ago. "Before we reveal more," Dr. Chen said, her voice carrying the weight of millions of years of human experience, "you need to understand what we've been protecting you from. The Void Heralds aren't just an enemy. They're a test that every spacefaring civilization must face. They embody the temptation to use power without wisdom, to take without understanding the cost of taking. We fought them," General Williams continued, "back when we were like them, drunk on our own power, certain of our superiority. The war reshaped galaxies. And in the end, we learned that victory wasn't about having the strongest weapons." Dr. Martinez approached the cup of perfect water and added a single drop of ordinary rain. The perfect molecular alignment shattered, creating something new, something natural and imperfect and beautiful. "Sometimes," he said softly, "the most advanced solution is knowing when to embrace imperfection. The Void Heralds cannot comprehend this. They seek perfection through power, order through dominance. They're what humanity might have become if we hadn't learned to step back." The facility hummed with energy as more of humanity's hidden technology awakened. Not to fight, but to prepare, to teach, to guide, to help the galaxy's younger races understand what had taken humanity millions of years to learn. "Your people aren't ready to wield our highest technologies," Dr. Chen told the Centurion delegates. "But you're ready to begin understanding why we chose not to wield them ourselves. The question is, are you prepared to learn?" As if in answer, the darkness between the stars pulsed, and across the galaxy, younger civilizations looked up at their skies in fear and wonder. Humanity's time in the shadows was ending, not with show of force, but with an offer of guidance. The true test was about to begin, the ultimate lesson. In Earth's orbital ring, carefully hidden behind holographic clouds, Sarah Chen watched the galaxy prepare for war, not with weapons. Humanity had learned better, but with understanding. The Centurion delegation had spread the word, and now representatives from 1,000 species were arriving, each discovering that Earth's primitive space stations were gateways to technologies beyond their comprehension. "They're adapting well," Ambassador Ron noted, his scales now a thoughtful shade of blue-green after 3 weeks of revelations. He'd become an eager student of humanity's philosophy, though some still demand access to your advanced weapons. "Of course they do," Sarah smiled, watching a holographic display showing civilizations across the galaxy discovering carefully planted human artifacts. "We did too, once. The hardest lesson we learned was that the most powerful weapon isn't a weapon at all." The station's observation deck shifted, its seemingly glass windows becoming a vast display of the approaching Void Heralds. The darkness between stars had purpose now, moving with terrible intelligence. "They're not just an enemy," Sarah explained, gesturing to patterns that only humanity's ancient understanding could perceive. They're a reflection of what happens when a civilization gains power without wisdom. We know we nearly became them. Deep in the Horsehead Nebula, Dr. Vexa made another discovery. This time, she wasn't alone. Human archaeologists worked alongside her team, revealing layers of history that had been hidden in plain sight. "This is impossible," she whispered, examining a device that appeared to be both ancient and brand new. "The quantum dating shows it's millions of years old, but it's still functioning perfectly." "Because it was designed to," explained Dr. James Martinez, who had quietly appeared beside her. "Some technology doesn't need to be flashy or powerful. Sometimes the most advanced solution is the one that endures." The device activated, projecting a history that made Vexa's species' proudest achievements seem like a child's first steps. But it wasn't a history of conquest or technological superiority. It was a record of humanity's failures, their lessons, their growth. Back on Earth, in a classroom that defied normal space-time, General Williams addressed representatives from across the galaxy. The room appeared to be a simple lecture hall, but each attendee experienced it in their own atmospheric conditions, their own gravity, their own way of perceiving reality. "The Void Heralds aren't coming to destroy you," she explained. Her voice translated perfectly into 1,000 languages. "They're coming to offer you what they offered us millions of years ago: power without price, advancement without wisdom, perfection without understanding." The room's walls became transparent, revealing the true Earth beneath its carefully maintained disguise. Vast cities that existed out of phase with normal space-time, technologies that could reshape reality, and yet, scattered throughout, preserved examples of humanity's simpler tools and machines. "We keep these." Williams gestured to a preserved steam engine. "Not because we need them, but because they remind us of something crucial. Every tool, no matter how simple or advanced, has a lesson to teach." In orbit, Sarah led Ambassador Ron through a door that opened into the heart of Jupiter's great red spot. Here, in a storm that had raged for centuries, humanity maintained one of its most important facilities. Not a weapons platform or a shield generator, but a library. "Your people believe the storm is a natural phenomenon," she explained as they walked through halls containing the accumulated knowledge of millions of years. "In a way, it is. We learned long ago that the best hiding places are the ones that don't look like hiding places at all." The facility's alert suddenly changed tone, not warning but recognition. The Void Heralds had begun their approach to occupied space, and their message was the same one they offered humanity eons ago: surrender to perfection. "Why maintain the deception for so long?" Ron asked, watching as the darkness approached. "Why not simply show your power and leave the galaxy openly?" Sarah's smile held millions of years of human experience. "Because true leadership isn't about showing power. It's about teaching others to use their own power wisely. We didn't hide because we were afraid. We hid because some lessons can only be learned through experience." Across the galaxy, humanity's hidden guardians emerged from their cover of primitive technology, not with weapons or shields, but with something far more powerful: understanding. As the Void Heralds approached, humanity prepared to teach the galaxy's younger races the hardest lesson they'd ever learned: that the strongest defense against the darkness isn't technology or weapons, but the wisdom to know why you shouldn't need them. "The true test," Sarah said, watching the galaxy's younger races prepare for what was coming, "isn't whether we can defeat the Void Heralds. It's whether we can teach you to understand why they're already defeated, not by our power, but by our choice to use it differently." The darkness between the stars grew closer. But now, it faced something it had never encountered before: a humanity that had spent millions of years preparing not for war, but for understanding. The Void Heralds arrived, not with violence, but with a whisper that echoed across civilized space. Their message was simple, seductive: accept our gift of perfection. In Earth's primary command center, buried in the quantum realm beneath Antarctica, Maya Patil stood before representatives of 10,000 worlds. The chamber appeared to be a simple auditorium, but it existed simultaneously in every major capital of every spacefaring race. "Watch carefully," she said, as the Void Herald's first demonstration began. Around a distant star, reality itself seemed to crystallize. transforming an entire solar system into a mathematically perfect structure. This is what we refused eons ago. Ambassador Ron's scales shifted to deep gold, wonder mixed with fear. It's beautiful, he admitted. Yes, Serachin agreed, standing beside him. Just as a perfectly aligned crystal is beautiful. And just as dead. The display shifted, showing the transformed system in spectrums beyond normal space. Where there had been a vibrant ecosystem of planets, now there was only sterile perfection. Where there had been evolution and change, now there was only stasis. We almost accepted their gift, Dr. Martinez explained, his simple clothing now revealed as an interface with technologies beyond comprehension. We nearly became them. Perfect, unchanging, empty. Across the galaxy, humanity's hidden guardians activated their final protocol. Not a weapon, not a shield, but a lesson written in the language of reality itself. Every piece of primitive technology they'd maintained, every simple machine they preserved, began to tell its story. In the Centurion capital, steam engines revealed quantum equations hidden in their steam patterns. On distant worlds, internal combustion engines demonstrated principles of cosmic expansion in their firing cycles. Simple wooden doors became gateways to understanding that transcended normal space-time. The Void Herald's perfect crystal ships approached Earth, their message unchanged. Except perfection and chaos become eternal. Maya stepped forward, her voice carrying to every world, every species, every being capable of understanding. We offer something different, she said. Not perfection, but growth. Not stasis, but change. Not power, but wisdom. The simple cup of water from the first archive appeared before every representative. But now, they could see what humanity had seen millions of years ago, that in its very imperfection lay the seeds of something greater than perfection. Your civilizations look at humanity's primitive technology and see weakness, General Williams announced. The Void Heralds look at it and see inefficiency, but look deeper. The chamber's quantum displays revealed the truth that humanity had hidden for so long. Every primitive technology they maintained contained patterns that echoed to reality itself. The smoke from steam engines traced paths that matched galactic evolution. The rhythm of internal combustion mapped the heartbeat of space-time. We didn't maintain these technologies because we needed them, Sarah explained, as understanding dawned in the eyes of 10,000 species. We maintain them because they teach something that the Void Heralds can never understand, that perfection is not the absence of flaws, but the acceptance of them. The Void Herald's perfect crystal ships recoiled as their sensors detected something impossible. Humanity wasn't fighting back with weapons or shields. Instead, they were doing something far more dangerous. They were teaching. Across the galaxy, younger races began to understand. They saw humanity's seemingly primitive technologies contain profound truths. They recognized that the choice to use simple tools alongside advanced ones wasn't weakness, but wisdom. The Void Heralds offer perfection without understanding, Maya continued. We offer understanding without the promise of perfection. The choice has always been yours. In that moment, as crystal ships hung motionless in space, the galaxy's younger races made their choice. Not with weapons or technology, but with understanding. They chose imperfection. They chose growth. They chose life. The Void Herald's perfect crystal ships began to dissolve. Not from any weapon, but from contact with something they couldn't comprehend. The beauty of imperfection, the strength of weakness, the power of choosing not to use power. This was always the test, Sarah told Ambassador Ron as they watched the darkness between the stars recede. Not whether you could defeat them, but whether you could understand why they had already lost. Across the galaxy, humanity's hidden technologies powered down, not in surrender, but in victory. They had accomplished what no weapon could. They had taught the galaxy's younger races why the most advanced civilization isn't the one with the most power, but the one wise enough to know why power isn't the answer. What now? Ron asked, his scales shifting to a color that had no name, the color of understanding. Maya smiled, picking up a simple pencil from her desk. Now, we teach you everything else we've learned. Not because we're superior, but because every teacher was once a student, and every student becomes a teacher. The darkness between the stars had lifted, and in its place was something greater than perfection, the endless possibility of growth, change, and wisdom. Humanity stepped fully into the light, not as conquerors or saviors, but as teachers, ready to share the hardest lesson they'd ever learned. That true advancement isn't about reaching the stars, but about understanding why we reach for them at all. So, what's your take on humanity now? Are we just a bunch of clever apes, or is there something deeper, something wiser, simmering beneath the surface? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if this story blew your mind, hit that like button and subscribe for more cosmic revelations. Don't miss out on the next chapter of the galaxy's true history. You ever feel like you're yelling into the void and no one's listening? That desperate, heart-stopping moment when everything's on the line and all you can do is hope? Well, today's story is about a shout across the galaxy and the answer that nobody saw coming. A whisper in the dark. The scout ship seeker was a ghost. Its hull, once a proud silver blue, was now scarred, a testament to 1,000 desperate escapes. Inside, Captain Gray, his slender blue fingers trembling, hunched over the comms console. The data blinked back at him, grim and undeniable. "Are you sure this is smart, Captain?" First Officer Trell's amber eyes reflected the dim emergency lights. The humans, they were so primitive last time we checked, centuries ago. Gray didn't look up. What choice do we have? The Mord have taken 3 outer colonies this month. The home world will fall in weeks. The Seeker hugged the shadow of a small moon, invisible to the constant sweeps of Mord scout vessels. They'd picked this system because ancient Valen records whispered of a blue planet, Earth, close enough to send a signal, but far enough from Valen space to keep hidden. The Council ordered all ships back for the final defense. Trell reminded him gently. Gray finally looked up, his pale face set with a grim resolve. And what good is one little scout ship against the Mord fleet? This way, at least we try something different. He pressed his hand against the transmitter. The ship's computer had spent days crunching data, translating their desperate plea into basic human languages, adding horrifying visuals of the Mord attacks, technical specs of their terrifying weapons. Message encoded and ready, the computer announced. Gray took a deep breath. Send it. A soft pulse of energy left the ship, carrying the desperate hopes of a dying civilization. The message was simple. People of Earth, we need help. The Mord Collective threatens all free life. Your assistance once saved others. Please respond. Trell watched the energy signature fade, a tiny ripple heading for that distant blue planet. What do you expect them to send? A diplomat? A scientist? One ship? Gray's shoulders slumped. Just a fraction. Anything, Trell. Anything would help right now. Even their perspective might give us something our scientists haven't considered. Little did they know. In the centuries since the Valen last peered at them, humanity had changed. Oh, how they had changed. Earth answers the call. Admiral James Wilson stood at the window of Lunar Command, Earth hanging like a precious jewel in the vast blackness. At 62, his hair was pure white, but his posture was as ramrod straight as it had been 35 years ago when he joined the United Defense Fleet. "You're sure about the translation?" he asked, not turning. Behind him, Dr. Lisa Park nodded, her eyes glued to her data tablet. "Yes, Admiral. Our linguistics AI confirms it with 98.7% certainty. This is a genuine distress call from an unknown species, calling themselves the Valen. They're under attack by something called the Mord Collective." Wilson turned. The command center buzzed with controlled chaos. Technicians, officers, all processing the incoming data. The technical data they sent is extensive. Commander Ben Foster, the fleet's tactical officer, added. The Mord appear to be a hive mind species with partially synthetic biology. Their ships use quantum-link shields and plasma-based weapons. Formidable, but not beyond our capabilities. Wilson walked to the central holographic display. Images flickered to life. Strange, angular, insect-like ships clashing with smaller, more elegant vessels. The smaller ships were clearly losing. Location? The Valen homeworld is approximately 40 light-years from Earth, Foster replied. With the new jump drives, we could have a response fleet there in under 2 weeks. Wilson's eyes narrowed, scanning the data. The Valen clearly had no idea what they were dealing with. Their message suggested they expected, at most, a diplomatic envoy, maybe a single ship. They didn't realize that in the centuries since humans had last encountered alien life, Earth had united under the pressure of existential threats. They'd built a fleet, not just to protect Earth, but to ensure humanity would never face extinction again. The Security Council will need to approve any major deployment. Dr. Park gently reminded him. Wilson nodded slowly. Schedule an emergency session for 0800 tomorrow. Have all this data packaged and ready for presentation. He paused, watching the simulation of moored ships decimating a Valen colony, and begin quiet preparations for the Third Fleet to mobilize. 3 days later, the United Earth Security Council chamber fell silent as Admiral Wilson concluded his presentation. The moored collective represents exactly the type of threat our fleet was built to counter, he said, standing tall before the 12 council members. Based on the data provided, they systematically consume all resources in a system before moving to the next. The Valen are simply in their path. Councilor Rivera leaned forward. And you believe we should commit significant forces to help an unknown species? Admiral, this isn't our fight. With respect, Counselor, Wilson replied firmly. It became our fight the moment we received their call. We've built this fleet not just to protect Earth, but to uphold the principles that united us. If we ignore this, what message does that send other peaceful species? More practically, if the more consume the Valen, they'll only grow stronger before eventually finding us. The Council President, Dr. Omar Khan, studied the Admiral. What exactly are you proposing? I recommend deploying the Third Fleet under my command. 50 ships, including the Dreadnought's Deterrent and Resolute. We've analyzed the moored weaknesses and believe we can halt their advance. The chamber erupted in whispers. 50 ships, the largest deployment in human history. That would leave our core systems with reduced protection, noted Counselor Chun. Wilson nodded. A calculated risk. But our perimeter defense systems are more than capable of handling any known threats while the fleet is deployed. After hours of intense debate, the council voted. The decision was made. Humanity would respond to the call. A new kind of doom? Back on the Seeker, Captain Gray received the shocking news from Valen High Command. They've detected what? He asked, certain he'd misheard. A massive energy signature approaching the outer boundary of Valen space, repeated the commander on the secure channel. At first, we thought it was a new moored battle group, but the signature is completely different. Initial analysis suggests multiple ships, many ships. Gray felt his heart racing. From Earth. We cannot confirm, but the trajectory matches. Captain, what exactly did you ask these humans for? Gray stared at the data streaming across his screen, showing energy readings far beyond anything the Valen fleet had ever produced. I just asked for help. As the Seeker raced toward home, Gray wondered what kind of civilization could respond to a simple distress call with such overwhelming force. What had humanity become in the centuries since the Valen last observed them? And would their arrival mean salvation or simply a new kind of doom? The fate of the Valen now rested in the hands of a species they had drastically underestimated. The Deterrent. The massive hangar bay of Lunar Station Alpha hummed with activity. Shuttles zipped between colossal vessels, carrying supplies and personnel. At the heart of this organized chaos stood the UES Deterrent, a Dreadnought-class warship stretching nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern. Its dark hull seemed to absorb light, making the massive ship look like a hole punched into space itself. Commander Jack Reed walked along the observation deck, watching the final preparations for departure. At 45, Reed had spent more than half his life in space, commanding everything from small patrol vessels to battle cruisers. The silver streaks in his dark hair and the faint scar along his left jaw told stories of countless battles won against hostile forces at the edges of human space. Quite a sight, isn't it? Reed turned to find Admiral Wilson approaching, his white uniform crisp despite 36 hours of non-stop preparation. 50 ships, Reed said, shaking his head slightly. The largest force we've ever assembled outside our solar system. Wilson came to stand beside him at the railing. and you'll be leading them into unknown territory to face an enemy we've only seen in data transmissions. Reed's expression remained calm, but his eyes narrowed slightly. The tactical simulations are promising. If the moored technology is, as the Valen described, our phase shift weapons should bypass their shielding. Theory and practice are different things, Commander. Wilson handed Reed a datapad. Your final orders. The fleet jumps in 6 hours. Reed accepted the pad with a nod. What do we know about these Valen? Not much beyond what was in their distress call. Humanoid. Apparently peaceful. Advanced enough for interstellar travel, but clearly behind us militarily. Dr. Miller will brief you fully during the journey. And if this is a trap? Wilson's face hardened. Then you show them exactly why humanity has remained undefeated for the last century. First contact, twice over. Dr. Anna Miller hurried to the corridors of the deterrent, dodging crew members securing equipment for the jump. At 36, she was considered the leading expert in xenobiology and first contact protocols, though most of her work had been theoretical until now. She clutched her datapad tightly as she entered the ship's main laboratory. The space was massive, filled with equipment that could analyze anything from atmospheric samples to alien tissue. A team of 20 scientists was already at work, poring over the Valen data. Dr. Miller, her assistant, Tom, called out. The preliminary analysis of the Valen biological data just finished processing. Miller moved quickly to a station, scanning the results. Interesting. Oxygen breathers, carbon-based, but their cellular structure is remarkably different from ours, and their blood chemistry fascinating. Should we be concerned about cross-contamination? Tom asked. Miller shook her head. Their pathogens wouldn't recognize our biology as viable hosts, and vice versa, but we'll follow full protocols anyway. She moved to the center of the lab, where a holographic display showed the Valen home world, a blue-green planet orbiting a yellow star, not unlike Earth's sun. The real question, she said, more to herself than anyone else, is why they reached out to us specifically. Their message mentioned that we once saved others, but there's no record of humanity ever encountering the Valen before. Tom frowned. Could it be a case of mistaken identity? Possibly. Or perhaps it happened before our unified records began. Miller zoomed in on an image of a Valen from the transmission. The alien was humanoid, but clearly not human. Blue-tinted skin, large amber eyes, slender build. Either way, she continued, a glint in her eye, we're about to make first contact with two new species simultaneously, one peaceful and one hostile. This will either be the greatest diplomatic achievement in human history, or the beginning of the largest interstellar war we've ever faced. Or both, Tom finished grimly, underestimated. Captain Gray stood before the Valen High Council, feeling the weight of their disapproval. The council chamber, usually a place of calm deliberation, now served as a war room. Holographic displays showed the advancing moored fleet, and more disturbingly, the approaching unknown ships from Earth. You have brought another unknown variable into an already desperate situation. Council leader Vac snapped, his aged face lined with worry. These humans could be as dangerous as the moored. Gray straightened his posture. The ancient records clearly state that humans helped defend the Lord E3 centuries ago when the Crystal Horde attacked their worlds. Records from a time before the Great Collapse, countered Counselor Mira. We have no way to verify their accuracy, and even if true, humanity could have changed drastically since then. They have, Gray admitted. The energy signatures from their approaching fleet suggest technology far beyond what our records indicated they possessed. But they're responding to a call for help that suggests their basic nature remains compassionate. The chamber doors slid open, and First Science Director Pell rushed in, her usual calm demeanor shattered. We've received new data from our long-range sensors, she announced, connecting her datapad to the central display. The human fleet is massive, 50 vessels, many larger than anything in our defense force. The council members fell silent as the images appeared. Dark ships with sleek, predatory designs, bristling with weapon systems a Valen couldn't even identify. By the first light, whispered Counselor Mira. What have we done? Gray studied the images. a mixture of hope and concern washing over him. We've called for help, and they've answered with force enough to potentially match the Mord. Council Leader Vax stood slowly. Captain Gray, you initiated this contact. You will now be responsible for it. Your rank is reinstated, and you are hereby appointed as official liaison to the humans. Meet their fleet at the outer system and determine their true intentions before they reach our home world. Gray bowed deeply. I understand, Council Leader. As he left the chamber, Gray's mind raced. The humans had responded with far more force than he had ever imagined possible. Had he saved his people or doomed them? In 3 days, when he would face these humans directly, he would learn the answer. Welcome to the party. Commander Reed stood on the bridge of the deterrent as the countdown to jump completion reached 0. Around him, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency, monitoring systems as a massive warship and its accompanying fleet prepared to emerge into Valen space. Jump complete in 3, 2, 1, announced the navigation officer. The view through the main display shifted as the fleet dropped out of jump space. Before them lay a star system with multiple planets, and in the distance, the faint blue-green glow of the Valen home world. Sensors detect multiple vessels approaching from the inner system, reported the tactical officer. Small ships, minimal weapons. Likely a greeting party. Reed nodded. And the Mord? Long-range sensors show significant fleet activity 2 light days out. On the far side of the system, they appear to be massing for an assault. Dr. Miller, who had been granted bridge access to the arrival, stepped forward. Commander, their greeting vessels are transmitting a message. Reed gestured to the communications officer. Put it through. The main screen shifted to show a slender, blue-skinned alien with large amber eyes. When it spoke, the ship's AI translated seamlessly. Greetings, vessels from Earth. I am Captain Gray of the Valen Defense Force. On behalf of my people, I welcome you to our system, and thank you for answering our call. Though I must admit, we did not expect quite so many of you. Reed met the alien's gaze steadily. Captain Gray, I am Commander Jack Reed of the United Earth Fleet. We received your distress call and have come to render assistance against the Mord Collective. Request permission to approach your home world and establish proper communications. Gray's expression was difficult to read, but the slight tremor in his voice was unmistakable. Permission granted, Commander, and thank you. Your arrival has given my people something they had lost. What's that? Reed asked. Hope, replied Gray, simply. As the human fleet moved deeper into the system, the Mord Collective adjusted their own approach vectors. Their hive mind registered the new arrivals and began to calculate the threat they might pose. The gathering storm was about to break. A tour of human power. The shuttle bay of the U.S. deterrent was immaculate, polished to military perfection. Commander Reed stood with perfect posture, flanked by Dr. Miller and a small honor guard. They watched as the Valen shuttle gently touched down, its smooth blue-silver hull contrasting sharply with the dark, angular human vessel surrounding it. Remember, Dr. Miller whispered, their body language is different from ours. What looks like aggression might be curiosity, and what seems like submission could be respect. Reed gave a slight nod, his face betraying nothing of the tension he felt. This wasn't just any first contact. It was happening in the shadow of an approaching enemy force. Every moment spent on diplomacy was a moment not spent preparing for battle. The shuttle's door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing Captain Gray and 2 other Valen officials. They stepped forward cautiously, their large amber eyes taking in the human welcoming party. Gray was dressed in what appeared to be a formal uniform, deep blue with silver markings that matched the patterns on their ships. Captain Gray, Reed said, stepping forward, welcome aboard the deterrent. Gray placed his right hand over his chest and bowed slightly. Commander Reed, the Valen High Council sends their gratitude for your swift response. His eyes drifted to the massive hangar bay around them, taking in the arsenal of fighters and combat shuttles. Though we must admit, we did not anticipate such significant military presence. Reed's expression remained neutral. When we received your distress call and the data on the Mord Collective, our Security Council determined a full military response was warranted. Dr. Miller stepped forward with a warm smile. I'm Dr. Anna Miller, xenobiologist and first contact specialist. We have much to learn from each other, Captain Gray. Gray's companions exchanged nervous glances. One of them, a female Valen with darker blue skin markings, leaned toward Gray and whispered something. Gray nodded before addressing the humans again. This is Science Director Pell. He gestured to the female, and Defense Coordinator Jax. He indicated the other Valen. A stockier individual with what appeared to be some kind of mechanical augmentation around his left eye. Jax spoke, his translator conveying a deep, rumbling voice. Your weapon systems are impressive. We did not realize humans had advanced so far since our last observations. Reed raised an eyebrow. And when was your last observation of Earth? The three Valen exchanged uncomfortable looks before Gray answered. Approximately 300 Earth years ago, we observed your early combustion engines and primitive radio communications. Dr. Miller couldn't suppress a small laugh. That explains the surprise. Humanity has changed considerably since then. Perhaps we should continue this discussion somewhere more comfortable, Reed suggested, gesturing toward the exit. We prepared a conference room, and our chefs have attempted to create food compatible with Valen biology based on the data you sent. As they walked through the corridors of the massive warship, the Valen visitors couldn't hide their amazement. Crew members stopped and stared briefly before continuing their duties. For most, this was their first time seeing an alien species in person. Your ship is formidable, Gray commented, watching as they passed the weapons testing range where Marines practiced with advanced energy rifles. The Deterrent is our fleet flagship, Reed explained. One of 3 dreadnoughts we brought. Jax is mechanical, I whirred as he scanned the surroundings. 3? Your message indicated 50 vessels, correct? 3 dreadnoughts. 15 cruisers, 20 destroyers, and 12 support ships. The Valen stopped walking for a moment, stunned by the casual mention of such firepower. Pell, the science director, found her voice first. The entirety of the remaining Valen Defense Force consists of 17 vessels, the largest being approximately the size of what you would classify as a destroyer. Reed nodded sympathetically, which is why we're here. The data you sent suggests the Mord Collective has at least 60 ships currently in this sector. They entered the conference room, where a large display showed the current positions of both fleets in the system. The Mord forces appeared as red markers on the far side of the system, while the human fleet was represented by blue indicators near the Valen homeworld. They're gathering their forces, Jax noted, studying the display. The Mord typically attack in waves, overwhelming defenses through sheer numbers. Reed gestured for everyone to take seats around the table. Tell me about your previous encounters with them. The tactical data you sent was helpful, but I want to hear about their behavior patterns from someone with direct experience. As Gray began explaining, Dr. Miller observed the Valen were clearly desperate, but also frightened not just of the Mord, but potentially of humans as well. They had reached out for help, but the scale of humanity's response had clearly shocked them. Meanwhile, at the edge of the system, a small human scout ship drifted silently, its advanced stealth systems rendering it nearly invisible to conventional sensors. Inside, Lieutenant Maria Diaz watched the display as 3 Mord scout vessels approached. Hold position, she ordered her crew. Let them get closer. The bridge crew remained silent, watching as the insect-like Mord ships moved into optimal range. Unlike the elegant Valen vessels or the angular human ships, the Mord craft were asymmetrical, with strained protrusions and a chitinous appearance. They're scanning the area, reported the sensor officer, but they haven't detected us yet. Diaz nodded. Weapon status. Phase cannons charged and locked. New targeting algorithms loaded. Fire on my mark. Diaz waited as the lead Mord vessel moved directly into their kill zone. Mark. The scout ship's phase cannons fired. The energy beams passed directly through the Mord shields as if they weren't there. The lead ship's hull ruptured immediately, atmosphere venting into space before secondary explosions tore it apart. Target 2 and 3, fire. Diaz ordered. Before the remaining Mord vessels could react, they met the same fate. Within moments, all 3 enemy scouts were reduced to drifting debris. Diaz opened a secure channel to the Deterrent, Scout 7 to command. First engagement complete. Phase weapons performed exactly as predicted. Their shields offered no resistance. No survivors, no distress signal detected. Commander Reed's voice came through the comm. Good work, Scout 7. Return to formation. We'll analyze your combat data immediately. As the scout ship turned back toward the human fleet, Lieutenant Diaz felt a mix of satisfaction and unease. The weapons had worked perfectly. Almost too perfectly. If the rest of the moored ships were equally vulnerable, this might be a shorter conflict than anyone had anticipated. Hope, not just help. Back in the conference room, Reed received the combat report while the discussion with the Valen continued. He exchanged a look with his tactical officer, who nodded slightly. Captain Gray, Reed interrupted politely. We've just had our first engagement with moored scout vessels. 3 ships, all neutralized. The Valen delegation froze, their expressions showing disbelief. Already? Jax asked. You engaged them without coordination with our forces? Reed's face remained impassive. Our scout ships were monitoring the system perimeter. The moored vessels approached, and action was taken. And the outcome? Gray asked carefully. Complete neutralization. Our phase shift weapons bypassed their shields entirely, just as our analysts predicted based on your data. The conference room fell silent as the implications sank in. Science Director Pell was the first to speak, her voice barely above a whisper. You mean you've already found a way to defeat their primary defense? Dr. Miller nodded. Our scientists analyzed the shield frequencies in the data you sent. The moored rely on quantum link deflection fields, but they operate on predictable harmonics. Our phase weapons fire at precisely the frequencies their shields cannot block. Gray looked at his fellow Valen, then back to the humans. We've been fighting them for years and never discovered this weakness. Reed leaned forward. Sometimes it takes a fresh perspective, Captain. Now, let's discuss how our forces can work together. The more will know we're here now, and they'll be coming in force. As the tactical planning began in earnest, the Valen started to realize that the humans hadn't just brought ships and weapons. They brought hope in the form of new ideas and approaches. The tide was about to turn in a war they had been losing for far too long. The tide turns. The command center of the deterrent hummed with focused energy. Officers moved with practiced precision. On the main display, red icons representing the moored fleet shifted formation. They were no longer gathering at the edge of the system. They were advancing. They're moving faster than expected, Commander Reed observed, his voice calm despite the implications. They've abandoned their usual approach pattern. Captain Gray stood beside him, his blue skin seeming paler under the harsh lights of the human ship. The moored never change their tactics. Never. They rely on overwhelming force, applied methodically until now. Our destruction of their scout ships has triggered something, Reed replied. They recognize us as a serious threat. Tactical Officer Vega approached with a datapad. Sir, analysis of their new formation suggests they're concentrating their largest vessels at the front. They're preparing to punch straight through our defensive line. Reed studied the display thoughtfully. They're adapting. Interesting. He turned to Gray. Your people said the moored operate with a hive mind. Could they be reacting collectively to a new threat? Before Gray could answer, Dr. Miller entered the command center, slightly out of breath. Commander, I have something important. We've completed our analysis of the moored biological data. Go ahead, Doctor. Miller brought up her findings on a side screen. The moored aren't fully organic. Each individual has synthetic components integrated into their nervous systems, creating a network that spans their entire collective. It's how they coordinate so effectively, like a living computer network. Exactly. Miller's eyes shone with excitement. And networks have vulnerabilities. If we could broadcast a signal on the right frequency, we might be able to disrupt their coordination temporarily. Reed turned to his communications officer. How quickly can we modify our communications array to broadcast on the frequencies Dr. Miller specifies? 2 hours, maybe less. Make it happen. Reed looked back at the tactical display. But we need to slow their advance until then. Gray stepped forward. Commander, my ship could help. The Seeker is small and fast. We could deploy your disruptive technology once it's ready. Reed considered this for a moment before nodding. Approved. Now, let's adjust our defensive position. If they want to punch through, we'll make them pay for every meter. High above the Valen homeworld, the human fleet spread into a wide defensive formation. Destroyers and cruisers formed the front line, while the massive dreadnought hung back, their weapon systems powered up and ready. The remaining Valen ships integrated into the formation, their crews working alongside human officers through newly established communication channels. On the bridge of the deterrent, Reed watched as the moored fleet approached visual range. Their ships were even stranger in direct observation. Asymmetrical constructions that seemed to grow rather than be built, with pulsing lights that moved across their hulls like blood through veins. All ships report ready, Commander, announced the communications officer. Reed nodded. Fleet-wide transmission, weapons free. Engage at optimal range. The space between the fleets lit up as human phase cannons fired their first salvos. Brilliant beams of energy sliced through the void, passing through moored shields and cutting into their hulls. Several smaller moored vessels exploded immediately, while larger ships suffered visible damage but continued their advance. All ships report ready, Commander, announced the communications officer. Reed nodded. Fleet-wide transmission, weapons free. Engage at optimal range. The space between the fleets lit up as human phase cannons fired their first salvos. Brilliant beams of energy sliced through the void, passing through moored shields and cutting into their hulls. Several smaller moored vessels exploded immediately, while larger ships suffered visible damage but continued their advance. They're returning fire, reported Tactical Officer Vega. The moored weapons were plasma-based, superheated matter that splashed against human shields in vibrant bursts of color. Unlike the Valen shields, which had folded quickly under such attacks, the human defenses held. Shield effectiveness at 87%, reported the defense officer. The new harmonics are working. Reed allowed himself a small smile. Based on the Valen data, his engineers had recalibrated their shield frequencies to better resist the moored weapons. It wasn't perfect, but it gave them a fighting chance. The Valen destroyer Windstar is taking heavy fire, called out the tactical officer. Their shields are failing. Direct cruisers resolute and dauntless to provide cover, Reed ordered, on the tactical display. 2 human cruisers broke formation, moving to flank the struggling Valen vessel. Their point defense systems activated, intercepting incoming moored fire, while their main weapons targeted the attacking ships. Captain Gray watched with amazement. Your ships move with such coordination, yet each captain seems to make independent decisions. Initiative within structure, Reed explained. Every commander knows the overall strategy, but has freedom to adapt tactically. The battle intensified as the moored pressed their attack. Despite initial losses, they continued forward, seemingly unconcerned with casualties. 3 human destroyers suffered critical damage, their crews evacuating to nearby support vessels. A Valen light cruiser exploded, sending debris scattering across the battlefield. They're still coming, Gray observed, his voice tight with concern. Our losses are mounting. Reed's expression remained determined. Dr. Miller, status on the disruption signal? Miller's voice came through the comm ready. Commander, Captain Gray's ship is in position to broadcast. Execute. Aboard the Seeker. First Officer Trell monitored the human device, now integrated into their communications array. Broadcasting now, Captain, she reported to Gray via secure channel. The effect was not immediately visible, but sensors told the story. Across the moored fleet, ship movements became erratic. Some vessels drifted out of formation, while others fired at incorrect targets or ceased firing altogether. It's working, Trell exclaimed. Their coordination is breaking down. From the deterrent, Reed saw the opportunity. All ships, concentrate fire on their command vessels. Target the largest ships at the center of their formation. The human fleet responded immediately, focusing their considerable firepower on the massive moored vessels that appear to direct the smaller ships. Phase cannons cut to their defenses, while conventional weapons hammered the already damaged sections. One by one, The large Moore command ships began to explode, massive fireballs blooming in the darkness of space before being extinguished by the vacuum. With each destruction, more moored vessels lost coordination, their formations breaking. Tactical Officer Vega reported, unable to keep the excitement from his voice. Multiple ships are withdrawing. Gray stared at the display in disbelief. I've never seen the moored retreat. Never. Reed watched as the enemy fleet scattered, some ships jumping out of the system, while others continued to fight without coordination. They're not defeated, he cautioned, just confused. Without their command structure, the hive mind has temporarily fractured. Dr. Miller studied the sensor readings. The effect won't last. They'll adapt to our frequency and reestablish their network. Then we press the advantage while we have it. Reed decided. All ships pursue and engage. Don't let their larger vessels escape. The human fleet moved forward, breaking their defensive formation to chase the retreating moored ships. The Valen vessels joined them, their crews fighting with renewed vigor now that victory seemed possible. A debt, a promise, a new dawn. Hours later, the space around the Valen home world was quiet again. Debris from destroyed ships drifted silently while rescue vessels moved among damaged craft, retrieving survivors and offering assistance. On the deterrence observation deck, Reed stood with Captain Gray, looking out at the stars. 23 human ships damaged, Reed said quietly. 8 destroyed completely, though we managed to save most of the crews. 4 of your vessels lost, he turned to Gray. A high price, but your home world is safer now. Gray nodded slowly. My people have never known such sacrifice from outsiders. We called for help, expecting perhaps advice or a single ship. Instead, you brought a fleet and shed human blood for Valen lives. He placed his hand over his chest in the Valen gesture of deep respect. We cannot repay such a debt. This isn't over, Reed cautioned. The Moor will return, possibly with new defenses against our weapons and tactics. But when they do, Gray said with newfound confidence, they will find humans and Valen standing together. He paused, looking out at the stars. My people once thought we were alone in facing extinction. Now, we know differently. As damage reports continued to come in, and repair crews worked tirelessly, a message arrived from Earth. Admiral Wilson was on his way with reinforcements and experimental weapons specifically designed to target the more collective consciousness. The tide of war had turned, but the true test was yet to come. The alliance forged. The Great Hall of the Valen High Council had never hosted so many different beings. Sunlight streamed through the tall crystal windows, casting rainbow patterns across the gathered crowd of humans and Valen. At the center of the hall stood a memorial, a sculpture depicting intertwined human and Valen hands reaching toward the stars. 3 weeks had passed since the decisive battle that had driven the more collective from Valen space. 3 weeks of rebuilding, of healing, and of forging new bonds between species who, until recently, had been strangers. Admiral Wilson stood before the assembled crowd, his white uniform pristine, his posture perfect despite the fatigue that lined his face. Beside him stood Council Leader Vax, the aged Valen leader, leaning slightly on a ceremonial staff. Today, we honor those who gave their lives to protect this world, Wilson began, his voice carrying throughout the hall. Human and Valen alike, they fought together against a common enemy. Their sacrifices purchased something precious, time. The crowd remained silent, respectful. Among them were the crews of both fleets, some still bearing visible injuries from the battle. The Moor collective has retreated, but not surrendered, Wilson continued. Our intelligence suggests they are regrouping, adapting. When they return, and they will return, they will be ready for the tactics that defeated them before. Council Leader Vax stepped forward, which is why today is not only about remembrance, but about the future. Our scientists have already begun working with human experts to develop new defenses and weapons. What the Moor could not anticipate before, they will find doubly surprising when they return. From his position near the front of the crowd, Captain Gray watched with a mixture of pride and humility. Beside him stood Commander Reed, still recovering from injuries sustained when his bridge had been damaged in the final moments of the battle. You know, Gray said quietly to Reed, when I sent that message to Earth, I truly believe we might receive a single diplomat or perhaps a small science vessel. Reed smiled slightly. Humanity learned long ago that half measures rarely succeed. When we commit fully. A philosophy my people would do well to adopt, Gray admitted. We spent too long hoping the Mord would simply pass us by, until it was almost too late. At the center of the hall, Admiral Wilson was continuing his address. Today, I am authorized by the United Earth Security Council to propose a formal alliance between our peoples. Not merely a military pact, but a true partnership, sharing knowledge, resources, and a common vision for the future. A murmur of excitement passed through the crowd as Council Leader Vax raised his hands. The High Council has voted unanimously to accept this proposal. From this day forward, the Valen Confederation joins the interstellar cooperative that Earth has been building among peaceful species. Dr. Miller, standing with her research team, couldn't contain her smile. This is extraordinary, she whispered to her assistant Tom. Just weeks ago, the Valen didn't even know modern humans existed. Now we're allies. Tom nodded. Nothing unites like a common enemy. It's more than that, Miller insisted. Look around you. The cultural exchange has already begun. Indeed, throughout the hall, humans and Valen were intermingling, sharing stories, comparing experiences. Near one wall, a human engineer was deep in conversation with a Valen scientist, both gesturing excitedly over a holographic display of engine schematics. Admiral Wilson stepped back as Council Leader Vax continued the ceremony, presenting medals to heroes from both species. Among the first called forward was Captain Gray, restored not only to his former rank but promoted to serve as the official Valen liaison to the human fleet. For vision that reached beyond the stars, Vax proclaimed, placing a shimmering medallion around Gray's neck, and for the courage to seek help when all seemed lost. Gray bowed deeply, then turned to face the crowd. I merely sent message, he said. It was humanity who answered, not with words, but with ships and brave souls willing to fight for strangers. He looked directly at Commander Reed. That is a lesson the Valen will never forget. Reed nodded in acknowledgement, his expression solemn but eyes showing respect. Beyond the stars. Later that evening, as the formal ceremonies concluded, Admiral Wilson stood on a balcony overlooking the Valen capital city. Its architecture was unlike anything on Earth, graceful spires and flowing structures that seemed to defy gravity, all illuminated by soft blue lighting that complemented the twin moons hanging in the night sky. Commander Reed joined him, moving carefully due to his healing injuries. Beautiful world, he commented. Worth protecting. Wilson nodded. And strategic. When the Mord return, this will be our forward base of operations. Already planning the next battle, Admiral? Always. Wilson turned to face his officer. The reinforcements I brought include the new resonance disruptors. Based on Dr. Miller's findings, they should be able to target the Mord hive mind more directly, possibly even sever their connections permanently. Reed considered this. That could either defeat them entirely or turn them into something unpredictable. Yes, Wilson finished, but it's a risk we need to take. Their conversation was interrupted as Captain Gray approached, accompanied by Dr. Miller. Admiral, Commander, Gray greeted them. I hope we're not intruding. Not at all, Wilson assured him. What brings you here? Miller stepped forward, excitement evident in her voice. We've been analyzing the long-range communications data from our outer system sensors. There are signals coming from at least 3 other systems in nearby sectors. Mord communications? Reed asked, immediately alert. No, Gray replied. They appear to be distress calls, similar to the one we sent to Earth. Other species who have heard about what happened here. Wilson's eyebrows rose. Word travels fast. The Mord have been expanding for decades, Gray explained. Many civilizations lie in their path. Until now, resistance seemed futile. But after what happened here, hope spreads, Miller finished. They've learned that humanity responds to calls for help. Wilson looked out at the alien city, then up at the stars visible above it, each one potentially harboring life, cultures, People who might be facing their own desperate struggles against the darkness. Then we have work to do, he said simply. Commander Reed, prepare a report for Earth. We'll need more ships, more personnel. Reed nodded. The Moor won't expect us to expand outward while they regroup. Exactly. Wilson turned to Gray. Captain, would the Valen be willing to send representatives with us to these other systems? New allies might respond better to a diverse delegation. Gray placed his hand over his chest in the Valen gesture of commitment. My people would be honored. We called for help and received it. Now, we can do the same for others. As they stood on the balcony, a flight of ships passed overhead. The distinctive angular shapes of human vessels fly in formation with the sleeker Valen craft. Together, they rose into the night sky, a visible symbol of the new alliance. When the Moor fled, Gray said softly, one of our philosophers said something I found profound. In calling to the stars for salvation, we never imagined the stars would answer so thunderously. Miller smiled. That's humanity for you. We tend to make an entrance. The four of them watched as the patrol ships disappeared into the darkness above, carrying with them the promise of protection. What had begun as a desperate call from a dying civilization had transformed into something more. The beginning of a cooperative that would spread across the stars, uniting those who sought peace against those who would destroy it. The aliens had mistakenly called humanity for help, expecting perhaps a whispered response. Instead, a fleet had arrived, and with it, a future none of them could have imagined. And that's just the start of humanity's role in the galaxy. What do you think happens next? Do these new alliances hold? Will the Moor adapt and come back stronger? Let me know your predictions in the comments below. And if you want to be part of a community that always answers a call for awesome sci-fi, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. You won't want to miss our next deep